What?
We won't have 3PO in here snaking viewers.
We are live, guys.
Oh.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Matthew Kadish here, author, evil genius, and all-around nice guy. Here today with another Legion of Doom live stream where I have gathered the greatest evil geniuses from all corners of the internet to bring them together to not only take over the world, but also talk about nerdy stuff nobody actually cares about. And today, let me introduce you to my panel of doom. We have a varied and wonderful panel here. So, first and foremost, he is the big daddy who is everyone's father, the one, the only Matt Vader 74. Matt, why don't you say hi to everyone, tell them where they can find out more about you.
Hey, everybody. You can find me on Twitter at Matt Vader 74, Instagram as well. And also over on Mixer, I'm playing some games on Matt Vader with no 74 there. So,
Daddy.
All right, and he's the nerd so salty he might as well be the planet of Crate, the salty nerd, Alex. Alex, introduce yourself. Let everyone know where they can find you.
Hello, everybody. I am the Salty Nerd. I have a podcast available on iTunes and Spotify, and you can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at the Salty Nerd Podcast.
Right on, and he is everyone's favorite inebriated android and uses his red arm as a beer cozy. The one, the only Drunk 3PO. Drunk, take it away.
What's up, everybody? You can find me on Twitter and YouTube at Drunk 3PO. And if you don't want to if you find that weird, you can just call me Jay. It works the same. So,
and you may have adopted the darkness, but he was born into it, coming from Midnight's Edge After Dark. The one, the only Tom Connors. Tom, introduce yourself.
You just did.
Tell them where they can find you.
Of course. You can find me at Midnight's Edge and Midnight's Edge After Dark, hanging around there up to no good as usual. Thank you, Matt.
All righty. So, guys, we have got a big show today. So much to talk about. So much news flying around all over the place. We have some big stuff we're going to get to, and then we have some more kind of industry insider stuff that we're going to get to. So we're going to cover the gamut. But first and foremost, I'm going to start off with the biggest news to hit last night, which is that Marvel and Sony have come to an impasse, and the deal which brought Spider-Man back into the MCU is no more. And there's a great deal of fallout around this, and we're going to talk about it. So Deadline broke this story late last night, or I should say like early in the evening. And this is from Mike Fleming Jr. And the headline is Disney-Sony standoff ends Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige's involvement in Spider-Man. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige won't produce any further Spider-Man films because of an inability by Disney and Sony Pictures to reach new terms that would have given the former co-financing stake going forward. A dispute that has taken place over the past few months at the top of Disney and Sony has essentially nixed Feige and the future involvement of Marvel from the Spider-Man universe, sources said. This comes at a moment when the last two films Kevin Feige produced broke all-time records. Disney's Avengers Endgame became the highest-grossing film of all time, and Spider-Man Far From Home this week surpassed the James Bond film Skyfall to become the all-time highest-grossing film for Sony Pictures. I believe it broke 1.1 billion, so that's of note. Sources said that there were two more Spider-Man films in the works that are meant to have director John Watts and Tom Holland front and center, though Watts doesn't have a deal for the next picture. Unless something dramatic happens, Feige won't be the lead creative producer on those pictures. There's a lot of webbing here, but it all comes down to money, and it's easy to understand why both sides refuse to give ground. Disney asked that future Spider-Man films be a 50-50 co-financing arrangement between the studios, and there were discussions that this might extend to other films in the Spider-Man universe. Sony turned down that offer flat. Sources say that Sony, led by Tom Rothman and Tony Vinciquerra, came back with other configurations, but Disney didn't want to do that. So Sony did not want to share its biggest franchise. Sure, Disney would be putting up half the funding, but the risk is in how much you're going to make back in profit. Disney wasn't at all interested in continuing the current terms where Marvel receives in the range of 5% of first dollar gross, sources said. Now, it's easy to say that Feige has enough on his plate, especially after taking control of the X-Men universe for the Fox acquisition, including the Deadpool franchise, along with architecting the next phase of the Marvel superhero universe and building movies and shows for Disney+. But I'm told Feige loves Spider-Man, arguably the biggest superhero character in Marvel canon. He would have continued if Disney and Sony could have reached New Deal terms. Essentially, this means that Sony will have to try to win a championship without Michael Jordan. After all, Feige's first decade at Marvel, I'm just going to kind of skip through this. Get down here. Sources said Disney's top brass for several months has sought new terms for Feige and the Marvel cross-pollination to continue. As the Spider-Man relationship grew, Feige and Sony Pictures chief Tom Rothman spoke about the possibility of a wider involvement in the Sony-controlled Spider Universe, which contains 900 characters. 900, guys. It is understandable that the fiscally shrewd Rothman would balk at giving up half of Sony's biggest franchise to Marvel. After all, Marvel already owns the merchandising on Spider-Man. Does the mouse really need half of the movie's universe also? Sony so far has decided that as valuable as Feige is, Disney is asking too high a price. Sources said that Sony reasoned that they will be fine without Feige. The creative template has been set for the Spider-Man films, and Watt and Holland are in place along with Amy Pascal, who became producer with Feige after she exited the executive suite after presiding over the previous Spider-Man iterations, directed by Sam Raimi and Mark Webb as Sony Pictures chief. And sources note that Venom was a problem picture and far from the polished product that grossed $856 million worldwide, until Rothman himself spent a good long time in the editing room hoping to get it
God
there.
bless Rothman.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot here that I want to get to, but before we do that, I wanted to just highlight a few quick things from some articles. So Variety came out and kind of clarified a few things about the Spider-Man deal, in the sense that because Sony and Marvel or Disney can't come to a deal, it's official that the Marvel MCU can't use the Tom Holland version of Spider-Man anymore going forward. So I'll have a link to this article up in the description. And then they came out and Sony basically did a press release to Variety to clarify some things. And so this is from Dave McNary over at Variety, where he says...
Yeah, they had to clarify their first leak.
Yeah.
In quotations.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. So Sony disappointed by Disney's divorce on Spider-Man projects. Sony Pictures has gone public over its divorce with Disney on future Spider-Man projects in a rare public rebuke to Disney. Sony announced Tuesday night that it was disappointed over the decision, highlighting Disney's refusal to allow Marvel president Kevin Feige to continue as a producer on the projects. It also praised Feige, who teamed with Amy Pascal on Spider-Man Far From Home, which became Sony's most successful release earlier this week in terms of global box office. Much of today's news about Spider-Man has mischaracterized recent discussions about Kevin Feige's involvement in the franchise, Sony said in a statement. We are disappointed, but respect Disney's decision not to have him continue as a lead producer on our next live-action Spider-Man film. We hope this might change in the future, but understand that many new responsibilities that Disney has given him, including all their newly added Marvel properties, do not allow him time to work on the IP that they do not own. I want to highlight that there. In this statement, Sony says that Disney does not own the Spider-Man IP. The statement continued, Kevin is terrific, and we are grateful for his help and guidance and appreciate the path that he helped put us on, which we will continue. So
I would like to clarify the clarification. They do technically own it, but they are licensing it out to Sony. There's a difference.
They are, but I think there's something a little bit more interesting going on here than...
there could be, yes.
So just a quick background for people who aren't into the whole inside baseball, inside Hollywood type stuff. Amy Pascal, who is the producer on these new Spider-Man movies, she used to be the head of Sony Pictures. And she was widely regarded as a very bad CEO. She was the one who pushed for the all-female reboot of Ghostbusters and a bunch of other stuff. And when the Sony hack happened, where North Korea basically hacked their servers and released all these emails and stuff, she was fired, essentially, because the Sony brass didn't like how she was running things. And she was replaced by this guy named Tom Rothman. Now, Tom Rothman used to run 20th Century Fox. He was widely regarded as the guy who kind of screwed up Fantastic Four and stuff like that, because he was kind of like a Les Moonves character who didn't like science fiction all that much. Tom, you want to fill in people on Tom Rothman's background?
Oh, Tom Rothman came from Fox, and while he was at Fox, he was notorious for not liking franchise films, especially superhero fare. And most notoriously, he was the one who was involved with a lot of the crap behind the scenes in X-Men 3 and Wolverine.
Yeah, so basically over at Sony, Amy Pascal was like that high school teacher who was kind of lackadaisical. She let you get away with anything in class. You didn't have to turn in your homework or study or anything like that. And then Tom Rothman's like the guy who comes in after that teacher left to take care of her sick mother, and he's like super strict, give you a detention for everything that every little thing that you did, and required you to do a bunch of extra credit stuff just to get a passing grade. And he was very unpopular at Sony when he first got there. And his management style is very micromanaging. Like one of these articles says, he will get in the editing bay and actually physically edit a picture himself. He's been widely criticized as being a hardcore micromanager, but he's also very cheap. He's a big cheapskate, and he doesn't like to shell out money. But he's been the turnaround guy for Sony under his regime ever since he kind of kicked Amy Pascal to the curb. Sony has seen kind of a resurgence in their moving arm, mostly because of his management style. Now, the interesting thing about this stuff, if we go back to the article over here, let me call this up. So Midnight's Edge released a very insightful video last night, and they pointed out that this guy here, Mike Fleming Jr., the journalist over at Deadline, was referenced in the Sony hack, where emails kind of revealed that he's Sony's go-to guy over at Variety if they want to leak something, or if they want to,
Deadline, but yeah,
get something out there. Yeah, Deadline, sorry. And this Mike Fleming Jr. guy is their dude. So the fact that this was written by Mike Fleming Jr. Leads me to a little bit of a conspiracy theory. And once I kind of put this out there, we're going to go to you guys and get your thoughts on this. So my belief is that Tom Rothman, being the penny-pinching hard charger that he is, he was being bullied by Disney. Disney was coming in; they were like, throwing their weight around, because compared to Disney, Sony is small fry. They don't have a lot of leverage here, and I think Rothman got frustrated that Disney was not coming back to the negotiating table with terms that were more favorable to him and his studio, and so I think Rothman leaked this news in the hopes of pressuring Disney to come back to the negotiating table, because he thought that public sentiment would be on his side. However, what happened was that everyone was starting to blame Sony for the negotiations breaking down. But if you read this article, it's very geared towards like, oh, Disney pulled Kevin Feige, Disney did this, Disney did that. They were trying to paint Sony as the good guys, but everyone on the internet automatically assumed Sony were the bad guys. And then Sony, in response to this, had to issue a statement to say that, hey, we're not at fault here. We're disappointed by Disney's divorce. We're still open to doing negotiations, but we're waiting for Disney to come back to the table. So it seems to me like this was a power play by Rothman to try to get Disney to reconsider their position that backfired on him. So why don't we talk about this news and try to figure out what exactly is going on here. Tom, obviously Midnight's Edge has done some excellent coverage on this. Why don't we start with you?
Well, yeah, I guess I'm going to piss whatever viewers we have listening right now. I don't know how many people are listening. The hate boner for Disney, you have to get that out of your psyche for a moment in this instance, because at first glance, you're like, yeah, fuck Disney. Sony got them. Well, all Sony did was kind of shoot themselves in the foot and threw away any power they had at the negotiation table. Because let's put this into perspective for a moment. As you pointed out, Mike Fleming is Sony's little go-to guy. So Sony's the one who probably went to the papers with this to begin with. And then they went and clarified their own reporting. And they're the only ones who have said anything. As far as I know, we have not gotten one peep out of Disney or Feige yet about this whole situation. And now, one thing that needs to be clear here is anything that has to do with the MCU, if they don't negotiate and make this deal, we're going to still get the same Spider-Man. We're still going to get the same universe, in quotations technically, but it will be completely removed from the MCU. We're still going to have Tom Holland as Spider-Man, so we're not going to get a reboot. I know a lot of people are all like, oh, we're going to get a big reboot now. It's going to get better, because even if you didn't like Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home, nothing is going to change. It's still going to be the same cast, same characters. The only difference is they're not going to be able to say anything about Tony Stark. They're not going to be able to say anything about any Avengers. You're not going to see, Nick Fury show up, or Happy for that matter. They're just going to completely disappear. And any lingering storylines that had anything to do with the MCU are just going to completely disappear. We're right back where we were with Spider-Man 3 and the Amazing Spider-Man films. The same people who basically were involved then are involved now. And the main person that Matt brought up is Amy Pascal. And the thing that people aren't stopping to think about when they think, oh, Disney's being greedy, Kevin Feige just handed Sony their biggest hit of all time. And they basically just said, okay, we got the keys. We'll take it from here. I need people to put that in perspective for a moment in their minds, because if anybody remembers what we dealt with Spider-Man before, with Ghostbusters before, with anything that had to do with Amy Pascal before, get ready for more. That's all I'm going to say on that part, unless they can work something out.
Amy Pascal was behind the Amazing Spider-Man movie, so if you didn't like those, then that's kind of an indication of how well she ran things. Jay, Drunk 3PO, what are your thoughts on this? Because I know you dropped a video earlier on about this topic as well.
Mine was mostly on the this whole power play thing, going back and forth. I used Data Racer's tweet bots pictures that he posted just to kind of show just the craziness that goes on with these kind of things. Honestly, Spider-Man is he's one of the characters that can hold his own universe, honestly. So just like Tom said, I mean, it'll just be Tom Holland in his own MCU universe. He just won't have anybody else, but they can add Venom and Carnage, and he's got some of the greatest villains out there as well. So I don't know what to expect, honestly. I just think that I agree. This is just a power move back and forth. It all comes down to money. Who wants the most money? Who's willing to take less money? And it's just being pulled back and forth on these different power plays. So,
yeah, there is already talk that Tom Holland is going to be included into the Venomverse, which is
how come no one's talking about Night Monkey? That's what I want.
Somebody did a poster on Twitter. I seen it. Marvel's newest hero, Night Monkey.
That's what I want. I want the Night Monkey. Let's just start over with Night Monkey. Tom Holland.
Unfortunately, I think Night Monkey falls under Sony's license because they had it in their movie.
Tom, can you find that out for me? Because I really want to know.
I'm pretty sure Matt's right. See, that's the thing. That's what has to do with all these quote-unquote fake versions of the characters we're getting of Mary Jane and Marissa Tomei's Aunt May and, Ned and all his buddies and stuff like that in this version of Flash. These were all made this way so that Sony could protect the original IPs. So it wasn't and this is another thing for those who were upset that they changed all these characters. It wasn't a choice made by Feige and crew. It was kind of a stipulation made by Sony so they could protect and go back to reboot things pretty soon if they wanted to. But again, they have Tom Holland for 2 more movies. They're going to try and stick him in the Spider-Man-less Venom-verse, as Matt was pointing out. So now let's try and wrap our head around that now, too. They're going to try and shoehorn Spider-Man into a situation where he was already written out of. So...
Yeah. And just to clarify on what Jay said about Data Racer. So Data Racer is he's kind of an investigative journalist on Twitter. Not a real journalist, but he just does it as a hobby. But he's very good at digging deep into stuff. And he basically has this theory that Disney has been unleashing their Twitter bots to make hashtag Save Spider-Man trend.
It could very well be.
I mean, like he has some interesting evidence up on Twitter. But go follow Data Racer. He knows he's got some interesting stuff up there. So
Yeah,
Alex,
I wouldn't put it past either company doing. I mean,
Right.
groundwork stuff all the way up. Anything to pull the lever, anything to gain leverage on what they're trying to do. I mean, why not?
well, it could be that Sony saw it or Disney saw Sony leak, and they're like, "Oh, you're going to leak? Okay, we're going to unleash our bots on you."
Yeah,
Alex, what do you think of this information?
I think, yeah, it's not salty. Thanks for doxing me, Matt.
Sorry, it was just weird. Like, that's the first time
Mr.
I've ever
Crates.
heard him on a live stream. Alex, it was just kind of like that's this. Sorry,
Who's that guy? I think they're both being greedy, but there was an interesting thing in there about the 5% that Disney had with the original deal for Spider-Man, which I thought was kind of low considering that he was plucked out of the Sony universe and put into the greater MCU that has been building for 10 years. 5% seemed a little low. So I would understand why they would want to renegotiate, but 50% almost seems too high because, like we were talking about, they don't own the rights. But I think this is just a failure to communicate. They're both being stubborn. They're both being a little greedy. And the only people who are suffering right now are going to be the fans. And I think, honestly, my opinion is Sony's going to suffer if they don't negotiate with Disney because, like we've seen before, they have failed time and time again to create a legitimate Spider-Man franchise, and they've had to reboot it a couple of times. Into the Spider-Verse did really well. That was a great movie, but I think that's a different division within Sony. That's the animated division.
Yeah, but don't think that gold trophy didn't give them delusions of grandeur either.
Yeah, probably. That's just my take. I think they're both being greedy. I think they need to work something out and give the fans what they want, which is Spider-Man within the MCU.
Yeah. So just to unpack this a little bit, under the deal that Disney struck with Sony, initially Disney got all the merchandising rights from Spider-Man, whereas Sony kept all the box office receipts.
Well, that actually came later down the road, Matt. You should point that out.
Yeah,
Sony sold the rights to Disney for the merchandising a few years back to save their own ass financially.
But in terms of like the box office split, so a lot of people don't know this, but the Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home films, those were those were Sony movies. They were not made via Disney or Marvel Studios. So Sony was entitled to 100% of the box office. And because they don't have the merchandising rights, that's why it was important that the new Spider-Man movie hit $1 billion. And the way this works is, like I pointed out in the article, that they made it a point to say Disney doesn't own the Spider-Man IP. Well, Disney does own the Spider-Man IP. They just, before they acquired Marvel, Marvel had licensed it out to Sony. And so Sony has the IP under a license agreement, and they have to put out a new Spider-Man movie every 3 years. Otherwise, it defaults back to Disney. And this is one of their biggest franchises. So, of course, Sony doesn't want to let that go. And the whole working nice with a rival studio has been an interesting development. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before.
Not to this extent, no.
Yeah, not to this extent. So, Mr. Vader, what are your thoughts on all this stuff?
I'm trying to look at this as from a fan aspect. I don't really understand all the numbers and the contracts and agreements and everything. I'm trying to figure out what we people who buy the tickets would want. And me personally, I want to see him stay in the MCU. It gives me a reason to be connected with the MCU, because otherwise I'm really not as interested in Marvel's movies now, and I'm not saying they wouldn't be great. They got 900 characters, right? So it's not like they don't have a wealth of source material that Sony could go and play with in this Venom verse. I just think they having that connection with the MCU is just, I think, better for everybody. And corporate greed and everything getting in the way, I think they need to figure it out. And you know what I'm trying to say? It's just like, what's good for us? And so it's all about greed at this point. So
yeah, I don't know if I agree with the greed part. These are two mega corporations kind of duking it out over the thing that makes them mega. And one of the juiciest parts of Hollywood to me is always these behind the scenes power struggles,
Right.
because it really is. It comes down to like Tom Rothman versus Bob Iger,
Or Kevin Feige, kind of.
and Kevin Feige kind of caught in the middle.
And I do want to clarify something you just said, Matt. Though I mean, yeah, Sony produced these, Sony paid for them, Sony distributed them, but Kevin Feige really did chaperone this whole thing since the beginning. If it wasn't for Kevin Feige, this wouldn't be in the position it is. And I know some people don't like the new Spider-Man, and I totally understand that. But again, I must reiterate, nothing is going to change. We're going to get the same stuff. Just now it's going to be less of the same stuff and more of what Amy Pascal did before. Because Kevin Feige, even though they wanted 50-50, I do think that's too much. He did do a lot of it. He did basically hand Sony their biggest film of all time. And they just basically said, no, we're good. We'll take it from here. So basically, I'm not trying to say Disney's Chicken Little in this instance, but it's a very similar situation. Like Kevin Feige did all the heavy lifting, and now they're going to enjoy the cake. Is really what it looks like.
A case of Disney throwing around their weight.
And you have that too. And there's going to be no winners in this situation. At least the other way, you had two winners. You had Sony able to do what they wanted to do with Venom and Spider-Verse and all that kind of stuff. And the MCU going forward with Spider-Man. In this instance, you're not going to get either, really. You're just going to get Sony's universe. That's it.
All right, let's go to some of the comments that we're getting. So Aaron C., he asks, are intellectual property contracts public or private? Can someone actually go look up the legal record somewhere if they wish? I believe that these contracts are private. I don't think you have to file like a agreement between two entities with the FCC.
If they were public, we'd be all over them.
Oh yeah. We'd have Data Racer would have tracked them down by now probably. So let's see here. I think Disney owns the IP and Sony pays a 25% licensing fee. That's from Critical Equation. Disney is the licensor, and Sony has the license to use Spider-Man. I don't know what their fee is, but I do know that as part of their contract, they have to put out a Spider-Man movie every 3 years or so, where it defaults back to Disney. Aaron C. asks, was Tim there during Ghostbusters 2016, or was that all Amy Pascal? Tom, you want to take that one?
Well, I already answered him in the chat, but yeah, no, it was Tom didn't come along until after Ghostbusters. And really, I've said this before, and I do reiterate, Tom Rothman was the best thing that ever happened to Sony. I mean, he really, outside of what Feige did for Spider-Man, Tom Rothman is exactly the shot in the arm that Sony needed. He brought in a lot of stuff they made money off of, like Baby Driver, for instance. So I mean, he's good at finding those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he came in, I believe, around 2015, but that all the Ghostbuster stuff was already
in motion. I think he cut some of the. He was the one I think responsible for cutting some of the budget, though, and he also was notoriously the one who cut the budget for Men in Black International this last year too.
Yeah, he definitely he does not like to spend money. That's his big thing. Is he'll come in, he'll cut budgets, he'll rein in that spending. Whereas Amy Pascal was just like she was making it rain while she was in there, and we saw how that turned out. I really hate the fact that she's somehow attached herself to all these Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, she got her little nails deep dug into Spider-Man.
Yeah, and a lot of people are blaming. Mr. Vader, I want to know your thoughts on this. Do you think that the success of Sony's other Spider-Man properties, of these 900 characters that they apparently have access to, stuff like Venom and Into the Spider-Verse, do you think that success made Sony think, hey, maybe we don't need Marvel anymore?
I think it definitely helped influence the decision short. I mean, that movie was extremely popular, right?
Well, it won an Oscar.
As it didn't make the money, but it won the Oscar, and a lot of people dug it.
I personally didn't like that movie.
I didn't either.
It gave me a headache, and and I had to watch it in like 3 different settings. But it really wasn't. It really wasn't made for me. I don't think so. That's fine. It was cool.
What do you think? Do you think that the success of the other Spider characters under Sony contributed to this?
I think a little bit, yeah. But trying to take in everything that you guys have said, because you guys have talked about a lot of stuff that I have no idea about, and I'm trying to put it all together. I think Disney was pining for some more cash, thinking that this version of Spider-Man needs the MCU, so we're going to need a little bit more money from you guys. And I think Sony is trying to hold their ground and say, no, this is our character, and they're trying to make a stand. I don't know how that's going to work out for them. I don't know if that influenced their decision. I'm sure it helped a little bit. Like, hey, we can do this on our own. We have before, we might need to change a couple of things. But we have Tom Holland. Tom Holland's super popular. Let's go with that. So I think it probably affected it a little bit. But I think this is more of a power play with the two companies, with Sony and Disney.
I definitely think Disney was trying to throw their weight around. And who knows, maybe Tom Rothman's angling like, hey, Sony, or hey, Disney, buy us out. I mean, who knows? Jay, what are your thoughts?
It's funny you mentioned that.
Can they do that?
Oh, yeah, they can do that.
The buyout?
Oh.
Could it be? Could Disney say, here's a check for Sony? And
how much did they spend last time? $70 billion on
Fox.
On Fox. And they're going to drop another 70 for Sony.
Oh, Sony ain't worth that.
No.
They could probably give them for $30 billion.
I was going to say 30, 40. I was going to be nice and say 50.
Yeah. How much would that? That would be so much control over so many properties. It'd be insane. Everything. They already have what, 40%?
Everything, and I'm really sick of like it's really weird that I've lived long enough now that I'm seeing remakes done like every other month, and they are literally the copy paste network.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it needs to be said that Warner owns a lot too, so we cannot, forget that.
And
I'm just saying, like, the quality of movies, man. It's just like copy. It's just they just copy and paste. So
no, I know, but yeah, we're getting to the point where it's going to be Warner versus Disney. Yes, it's getting to that point.
Speaking of Warner Brothers, we had a new development yesterday as well that kind of got overshadowed by all the Sony rigmarole.
Might have been a good thing.
And this is the announcement that Matrix 4 is officially a go. Basically, Warner Brothers is desperately looking to resurrect any franchise that they possibly can. And the Matrix trilogy was one of the biggest franchises of the early 2000s and has been basically collecting dust ever since. So I had heard rumblings that there was going to be a prequel to the Matrix movies, kind of spearheaded by the Wachowskis and starring Michael B. Jordan. But apparently that was all just bogus. The actual announcement made it official. This is from Variety by Justin Kroll. And it says, Matrix 4 officially a go with Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Lana Wachowski. Get ready to re-enter the Matrix. Lana Wachowski is set to write and direct a fourth film set in the world of the Matrix, with Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss reprising their roles as Neo and Trinity, respectively. Warner Brothers Pictures and Village Roadshow Pictures will produce and globally distribute the film. Warner Brothers Picture Group Chairman Toby Emmerich made the announcement on Tuesday. We could not be more excited to be re-entering the Matrix with Lana, said Emmerich. Lana is a true visionary, a singular and original creative filmmaker, and we are thrilled that she is writing, directing, and producing this new chapter in the Matrix universe. In addition to Wachowski, the script is also written by Alexander Hemon and David Mitchell. Wachowski is also producing with Grant Hill. Sources say the film is eyed to begin production at the top of 2020. Warner Brothers has been trying for the last couple years to find a way to get back into the Matrix universe, but a holdup over producing rights slowed the project down. Over the past couple months, the studio saw an opportunity to ramp up development, with Reeves boasting a strong summer that included box office hits John Wick 3 and Toy Story 4, and a script from Wachowski that drummed up excitement. Plot details are currently unknown, as is how the role of Morpheus will be handled, originally played by Lawrence Fishburne. Some sources say the role may be recast for a younger take. That's the Michael B. Jordan rumor. 3 previous films, The Matrix Reloaded, and The Matrix Revolutions, have collectively earned more than $1.6 billion at the global box office. All 3 were written and directed by Lana and her sister Lily, and starred Reeves and Moss. Many of the ideas Lily and I explored 20 years ago about our reality are even more relevant now. I'm very happy to have these characters back in my life and grateful for another chance to work with my brilliant friends, Wachowski said. The first Matrix had its 20th anniversary this year, marked by special screenings at select AMC locations starting on August 30th. Wachowski, blah, blah, blah. All right, guys. So obviously this film is going to be called Matrix Rebooted. That's my theory anyway. But what I want to know is, what do you guys think of this this development? So, Mr. Vader, what are your thoughts on a new Matrix movie?
I saw this come out yesterday, and I was kind of floored. I had no idea that this was something that was even in the pipeline, and I'm trying to figure out where they'll go with it, because Neo's dead, Trinity's dead. I feel like I don't know where they would go with the story, 20 years later now, and I'm kind of wondering if it's just not kind of trying to be a cash grab off of Keanu Reeves's sudden research.
Well, it's obviously a cash grab.
Quick movies and stuff, and I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see what happens. I don't think the Wachowskis have had a huge hit since the Matrix movies, right?
That's right.
And I don't know. I think the Matrix's time has come and gone. I mean, it was super cool back in the day, but I'm kind of dumb here on this.
Mr. Nerd, it makes you wonder: is the leather-clad techno music, sickly green overcast thing still relevant in 2019, 2020, as it was back in 2000 when it was like edgy and cool?
I don't know. The 80s came back in a big way with Stranger Things, so maybe the 90s can come back too. But no, I think those rumors about Michael B. Jordan doing a young Morpheus, that's kind of a cool idea, and I think that was more riding his Creed and Creed 2 and Killmonger success. They were like, oh, let's get this kid. We'll do something with the Matrix universe that we have. It's just like you said, collecting dust. And then once John Wick and Keanu came back in a big way with his success, they were like, oh, maybe we can, that's a recognizable name. That's recognizable characters. It's 100% riding the coattails of that success and a cash grab. That being said, if they take elements of John Wick and they put it in the mythology and universe of the Matrix, I might be all right with it. We'll have to see. I don't know. It really depends on what they do. I don't have a lot of faith in the Wachowskis writing. Like you guys were talking about, The Matrix is really the only successful good movies they've made, and the two are not that good. The only one is the first one that's actually really good. So I don't know. There's a lot to kind of unpack with this. It just really comes down to what they have an idea for the story. Like Matt was talking about, these characters are all dead. So where are we going with this? Are we doing like Force Ghost things where the computers have recreated their beings and put them back into the computer or something like that? It's going to be a weird way of writing that script to make this all work, but we'll see. 100% a cash grab, though. 100%.
I think it needs to be pointed out it's only one Wachowski.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But the interesting thing about the Wachowskis is, so they made a movie before The Matrix called Bound. It was like a lesbian crime thriller. But it was actually really good.
Shouldn't laugh at that.
Good smack material. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of. It's got Gina Gershon and what's her name?
What's her face from Chucky? Jennifer Tilly.
Jennifer Tilly in it. So a little bit of spank material, I guess. But
when you're a young teenager, hell yeah.
The original Matrix movie, I actually attribute a little bit more to producer Joel Silver, because he kind of came in and kind of guided the Wachowskis with what they wanted to do. And then after the original Matrix was such a big hit, the Wachowskis kind of lost that guiding influence because they were brilliant geniuses who could do whatever they want. And then we saw what happens when they can do whatever they want. Mr. 3PO, what do you think of this news? And where do you see the franchise going?
All right, so The Matrix was that movie when you first watched it, you kind of left the theater like, did anybody understand what was going on? And then like you had to go back again and then go, all right, who got it this time? And then you like had to have discussion. And then part 2 came out, and then you were just even more confused. But it got better as you kept watching it, because you're like, okay, I think this is where it's going. So all I have to say is I was super excited when Indiana Jones 4 was coming out, because I love the Indiana Jones trilogy, all of them, and Temple of Doom is the best one. With that being said, now we have a Matrix 4. I'm just reliving these horrible memories of like being overexcited to watch a movie and seeing them up on the screen again, and then like going to see Indiana Jones 4 and just just having vomit taste in my mouth at the expense of that film. So I don't know. If they do it right, it could be amazing. If they do it like it's been doing it, like, because now it's like when you hear rumors of we want a Back to the Future 4, you're like, no. Stop.
Don't even say those words, man.
Like all that stuff, and it's just kind of like, because I really think like Jurassic World did a great job. Not so much the middle one, but the one that came back, like Jurassic World, did an excellent job in vitalizing that. But
what's funny about Jurassic World is how much that movie gets a pass, but everybody says The Force Awakens is a rehash of A New Hope. All I thought of while I was watching Jurassic Park is I seen this movie 20 fucking years ago.
As a Jurassic Park shill, I can 100% agree with you. The first one,
The Force Awakens.
I like The Force Awakens too. The first Jurassic World was a reboot of Jurassic Park.
It was.
And the second one was a reboot of The Lost World. They're not much different. They're not.
I like The Force Awakens, but The Force Awakens is tainted now because of The Last Jedi. Like it's hard. It's hard to go back and relive that. I saw it like 7 times in the theater. It's hard for me to go back and relive that magic now, knowing like this is what's coming. So
7 times.
Right, well, getting back to the Matrix, Tom.
I was just comparing like movies that haven't been around and then they come back. So it's just you see the trend that happens. So
yes, Mr. Midnight's Edge. What are your thoughts on a Matrix 4?
My turn?
Yeah.
Balls. I was one of those. I'll tell you, I am a Keanu Reeves fan. I don't know if you've seen my Keanu Reeves shoot when I was there in Vegas or not, Matt, but it was pretty popular when I had it on. So I know Keanu is a very popular gentleman. And he's going to be very popular next year with Bill and Ted 3 coming out.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think this Matrix is going to be out next year. I don't know. I have a feeling it won't be out till the year after, but because they're just announcing it now, and unless they're farther along than we think, then they have a ways to go. But gosh, I loved the first Matrix, and I was one of those who actually didn't see it in theaters. I was too wrapped up in the Phantom Menace. Those 2 movies came out right around the same time. I don't know if anybody remembers, and I just totally ignored the Matrix, and I managed to not only ignore it, but nobody spoiled the movie for me. And I had enough friends tell me, go see this movie or see this movie. When it finally came out on video, I watched it and it blew my fucking mind. I was like, how did I miss this movie in theaters? And then the Animatrix came out and filled even more in and even like justified my little one of the few times I came up with a little fan theory in my head, and that was, this is the world that we live in after the Terminator or Skynet takes over. This is what happens, So it was like, oh, this is kind of a cool little world, what if kind of story. And the Animatrix almost solidified that with when the machines took over, it was very Terminator-esque. And then the second movie came out, and I went and seen it opening day in theaters, and I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And I felt like I watched a cartoon for the last 2 hours, and none of it made sense. I mean, I totally understood the first movie. This movie, I was just like, what in the hell? So I waited for video on the third movie, and the third movie I watched once. And I think I literally, I had the DVD at the time, and I threw it like in this pile of movies that I knew I'd never watch again because I don't have them on my shelf and stuff. And yeah, I have the Blu-rays, but that's just because it's in the box set.
It is interesting that the Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions, basically they got way too philosophical. They got away from the hero's journey, which was one of the things that made the first Matrix so enjoyable. So like they went less commercial with it and more kind of experimental, and I don't think it really paid off. But we got a comment from Neil over on YouTube. He says, I see this as a move by the Wachowskis to rebuild their careers. And the interesting thing about this this announcement is that only one Wachowski's coming back. So like all the Wachowski movies up to this point had both Wachowskis working together on them. And I think that the massive failure of Jupiter Ascending really hurt them. And they went to their next project after that was a Netflix series called Sense8. And that got canceled after 2 seasons because I guess nobody watched it. I actually checked out the first season. I thought it was okay. And when the second season started, I just kind of lost interest. But the Wachowskis' career have been on the ropes lately. And in fact, when I was doing some research into this, it turns out that Lily Wachowski, the one who was not mentioned in this press release, if you go on her Twitter website, it says ex-filmmaker. And a while back, the Wachowskis sold off their production office space in Chicago, and there was all this rumors that they didn't have any new projects in the works and that they were both retiring. But it looks like only Lily retired. Lana is still wanting to make movies, and so she's the one who's kind of pushing for this. Have any of you heard about what Lily is up to or what she's doing?
No, because that means I'd actually have to care. I'm surprised they still have a career. That's where I'm at with it. Period. I mean, I'm surprised this is even happening at all with them involved, any of them involved. Sorry, I think Matt was going to say something there.
No. Mr. Vader, did you?
I had no idea this was happening either. I'm far more interested in Wick 4 than the Matrix movie. So,
Jay, thoughts?
Again, it's just like we'll just wait and see.
Yeah.
That's
so we have
about it, man.
We have a comment from author Stephen Walton. Where can they go with Matrix 4? Did the machines rebuild Neo and Trinity? Will it be the next iteration of the Matrix?
No, here's your mind's going to be blown. Matrix 1, 2, and 3 all took place in the Matrix. And we are all seeing the visions of young, yet to be as old as he is in the Matrix. Lawrence Fishburne's character, what the hell is his name? Morpheus. So yeah, Lawrence B. Jordan's going to wake up. He's going to be young Morpheus, and he's going to realize he just saw his whole life in front of him. And then he'll meet Keanu Reeves, and they'll young him down, and they'll young down what's her face, and yeah, it's going to be all started over again. That's exactly what's going to happen. You watch.
Young down what's her face? Okay.
I can't remember her name. Carrie-Anne Moss.
Carrie-Anne Moss.
Trinity.
Yeah, Trinity.
They're going to de-age everybody.
Yep.
It's just going to be a lot of.
They're going to be in a cameo. That's it. Watch. This is all going to be a.
What if they do like a Terminator 2 thing and reverse it, and Keanu's like.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's
like
going to come in. Yeah, they'll either do that. Well, I don't know about that, but I was going to say
that'd be kind of cool if he was the new Agent Smith, Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, and they're like, "Hey, we trusted you. Yeah, trust me." Boom, and then you.
What if they tell the story from the Matrix point of view, where the main character is an agent, and he has to fight the one, and that's it's all about the Matrix overcoming humanity. That might be kind of cool. But
again, you're putting way much more thought into it, I think, than Warner Brothers or the Wachowskis are. They're just more like, give us more of the same, make it more like the first movie. So, like you said, it's going to be Matrix rebooted, and basically Morpheus is going to be in the Neo part, and Neo's going to be in the Morpheus part, and so on down the line. And that's exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be like The Force Awakens and Last Jedi all in one.
Neil says, heck, Patrick H. Williams' rewrite of these movies were better. I disagree with that. Nothing Patrick H. Williams ever writes is better.
They should have never made sequels. They should have just left it alone. The Matrix is a perfect, and somebody said this last night during our show, The Matrix is a perfect example of not everything needs to be a fucking franchise. We don't need everything to have a part 2, 3. And unless you're Nightmare on Elm Street, Star Trek, or the original Planet of the Apes, part 4s don't work out for people. Ask Jaws.
Especially 20 years later.
The Animatrix was better. I don't know about that.
It was better than any of the sequels, that's for sure.
Well, it was a collection of short stories, basically, from different aspects, and I didn't much care for it. I didn't like any of the Matrix tie-ins really. I played the video game, the MMO, for a while. Didn't care for that. It all felt very kind of hapdash.
Well, that game is notorious for being one of the worst games ever, considering that movie should have spawned one of the greatest games in history. It spawned one of the most disappointing ones in history, and I don't think the sequels did any better from what I recall.
Do you think Disney would make a Tron sequel to compete? I would be all for that.
I don't think Disney wants to spend any more money on Tron. I think they tried twice, and they're like, no, I think, we gave this a shot, and it just isn't going to work.
Neil says, I'm a fan of the Jurassic Park franchise, but Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom both suck.
Yes.
I agree, but Alex, what do you think of that?
I don't like part 3 either. I love the first 2, but like the original 2.
Look, as I've told people many, many times, I am never going to try and convince somebody that they're brilliant filmmaking, whatever, or they're masterpieces. Or if you don't like them, that's fine. I'm a Jurassic Park shill. If there's dinosaurs on the screen, I'm fucking sold. That's all it is to it. So but I'm never going to try and convince you guys that it's a masterpiece, or try and tell you that like people do with The Last Jedi. Oh, it's you just don't understand it. No, they're not perfect. They're not. So if you don't like them, that's fine.
All right, guys, I think we've got the winning comment of the day from Critical Equation, who I think nails what we can expect from the plot of Matrix 4. Critical Equation says, overcoming the evil Neo male patriarchy.
There it is.
So the Matrix is actually the male patriarchy, and we're going to have a transgendered Neo overcoming it.
Well, I was going to say, I'm surprised they haven't announced a young female lead for this. That's the thing, as I'm waiting for that. The new Neo is going to be a woman. That's going to be.
Why don't they let Bill and Ted go in their time machine and go so far into the future they go into the Matrix and run into Neo?
Hey, Ted, that dude looks just like you.
Yeah. Just totally mess with us. Just totally mess with us and just do it. And
that'd be the most popular movie of the year.
Probably.
It would make more than Endgame could ever hope to imagine.
What game? Screw that.
Yeah. All right, guys. So moving on, we've got some big news here, and I made a video on this a little while back, and my predictions were totally wrong because I did not take into account that Kevin Smith might be doing an animated feature. Smith had kind of teased that he was going to be involved in a quote-unquote nostalgic IP that everyone was knowledgeable about, and that he was going to be the showrunner / head writer for it. And I assumed that because of his association with like Supergirl and The Flash, that he was going to be doing a Craig Berlanti CW superhero show. I kind of guessed that it was going to be Booster Gold. I was completely wrong. Turns out that Kevin Smith is going to be working with Netflix to bring back He-Man and the Masters of the Universe as an animated / anime series. So this comes from Variety. It says, Kevin Smith announces anime He-Man series for Netflix. Kevin Smith surprised audiences at Sunday's annual PowerCon convention by announcing a new anime He-Man series for Netflix. The new series, titled Masters of the Universe Revelation, will take place in the Mattel toy-inspired world and will focus on some of the unresolved storylines of the classic 80s show. Smith will serve as showrunner and executive producer. I'm eternally grateful to Mattel TV and Netflix for entrusting me with not only the secrets of Grayskull, but also their entire universe, Smith said. In Revelation, we will pick up right where the classic era left off to tell an epic tale of what may be the final battle between He-Man and Skeletor, brought to life with the most metal character designs Powerhouse Animation can contain in the frame. This is the Masters of the Universe story you always wanted to see as a kid. Mattel Television is producing alongside executive producer Rob David. The vice president of Mattel TV and author of He-Man: The Eternity War writers include Eric Carrasco from Supergirl, Tim Sheridan from Reign of the Supermen, and Dia Mishra, Magic the Gathering, and Mark Bernardin, Alphas. Castlevania's Powerhouse Animation will oversee animation for the series. And if you guys haven't seen Castlevania on Netflix, it looks freaking amazing. Masters of the Universe has been a cultural phenomenon for generations, inspiring fans to discover their own power within. David said, fans of the franchise have been waiting for a continuation of these characters, and Kevin Smith, as a Masters superfan himself, is the perfect champion and partner to expand the canon through the dynamic animated series on Netflix. Now, guys, there's actually some subtext here that I want to fill you in on before we start getting into the panel on this. And that is that, first of all, there's a story from the Los Angeles Times. Mattel, the toy company, has created its own film division as a effort to turn, their toys into TV and movie offerings. Now, what they're doing here is they're basically following Marvel's model, where back in the early 2000s, Marvel created their own movie studio to make movies off of their own IPs, and we saw how successful that was. And so Mattel, unlike Hasbro, which license its toys out to other studios to make the movies, Mattel is actually trying to produce their own thing. And this Kevin Smith animated series is actually part of the Mattel TV push to bring some of their stuff to life. And I believe they're also working on like a Barbie's Barbie movie and a few other. I'm sure we're going to get a Magic 8-Ball movie at some point. But
versus He-Man.
yeah, but also in addition to Mattel kind of trying to branch out and
Amy Pascal joke, by the way.
yeah, in addition to Mattel kind of trying to jump out and make their own movies, this is also part of the streaming wars where we're seeing Netflix really try to ramp up their offerings. This is something that would appeal to, I think, both adults and children. So it's a kind of important linchpin for Netflix going forward in terms of original content. Because I know that, Alex, you probably weren't born until 3 weeks ago, but for most of us, like I grew up on He-Man. I was the biggest He-Man fan. I watched the cartoon every day. I had all the toys. Tom, I know you're a big He-Man fan. 3PO, are you a He-Man fan as well?
I mean, I like the cartoon.
Okay,
So,
well, I'll take that as a fan base.
I didn't like the Dolph Lundgren movie. I did watch it though.
I saw that on my birthday in 1985. I was so excited to see it. I walked out of the theater very disappointed because I was
it was like
87.
when Dolph Lundgren didn't play a Russian, his movies were disappointing. He played the Punisher, which is my favorite comic book character of all time, and I was like, wow, that sucked. And then, he did He-Man, and that just really wasn't his thing either. So, but yeah, I mean, what do you have? Like, you had He-Man, and then you had, what was that little magician? Orko? Was that what you called it?
I don't
In
remember.
the
Yes,
cartoon? You
Orko.
didn't watch the cartoon?
It's been about 20
Yes,
years.
Orko is his name.
Orko. Okay, and then what was the cat's name?
Or in the movie, Cringer or Battle Cat.
Battle Cat. That's it. And then Man at Arms, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
See, it's all coming back to me. It's all coming back. It's all coming back. So it was, and then She-Ra was in there at the end, and that was the whole thing. So
Mr. Vader, what are your thoughts on Kevin Smith being the head writer on He-Man?
I think if anybody's going to do it, he'll do it fun. It could be interesting. I don't know how much of Kevin Smith's humor is going to be inserted into this series, but I think of any 80s cartoon that could be redone, I mean, certainly He-Man is ripe for the reboot, right? I mean, I know lots of people who had dozens and dozens of He-Man toys, and I missed that by a couple years. I was in high school when He-Man came out, so it wasn't really my thing. But the guys a couple years younger than me all loved He-Man, and I think Kevin Smith's right there, and I think he'll do a great job with it. So.
You bring up an interesting point about Kevin Smith's humor. Salty, do you think that we're going to be getting scenes of He-Man trying to suck his own wiener?
You stole my joke, damn it.
That's the question we want to know.
Yeah, Salty.
Why would you ask me that? I'll just say it's before my time. I was never really a He-Man fan, so I'm not going to try and claim being a part of a fandom or anything. But I do like all the ingredients that you have laid out. You got the animation from Castlevania, which was dope. Kevin Smith, I love his stuff. I love his writing. I love his humor, but I think he'll probably tone that down for this.
Will he cry?
He'll cry. Absolutely, he's going to cry.
Is he going to smoke a pound of weed before?
Why wouldn't you? And then Netflix. I like a lot of the Netflix original stuff that they've been putting out. So all the ingredients are good. I'm looking forward to this. Maybe this will make me into a He-Man fan.
Yeah, it is.
I was going to say, if Kevin Smith doesn't insert a Triclops joke in there somewhere, I'm going to be disappointed. So,
the funny thing about this is that Netflix is billing it as an anime. So, like, this is going to, like, when you watch the original He-Man show, like, it's very of its time. And I'm going to kind of miss that, but it sounds like this is going to be geared more towards the adults who kind of grew up loving He-Man. So it's going to be more adult oriented. What do you think of this development, Tom? Because I know you're a big He-Man fan.
Oh yeah, I I'm a huge He-Man fan, and at first glance, I was like really excited, and then I wasn't so sure because of some of the things we're hearing. But I'm also a huge Kevin Smith fan, and I know as of late, he's gotten a lot of slack from the nerd community for, basically loving everything he can and inserting himself anywhere he can, and I don't know, the whole crying thing and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you went and stole my joke. I'm like, yeah, now it was going to be called Chasing He-Man, and Skeletor's going to be like, why am I the only one finally finding out that Prince Adam is gay? Why am I the last one to find out anything? And where's that Orko? He's the one with the good weed. And then Jay is going to be doing Orko's voice. And he's going to be like, snooch to the nude. And he's going to come.
Yeah.
There'll be a new playlist show on my channel, the Orko Report.
Oh shit!
So we have an interesting comment from Aaron C here who says, "What's the impact on Netflix's woke She-Ra?" So
I might
just to set the stage here. So Netflix commissioned a She-Ra reboot before the He-Man reboot, and it was done by a bunch of very radical feminist animators, I guess, and they made She-Ra look like a little boy. And a lot of backlash from the online community about how it was treated. I haven't watched the show. I used to watch the original She-Ra show, which I thought was pretty good. But what do you guys think about this? How is this new He-Man going to affect the She-Ra anime?
I don't think they have anything to do with.
No, they don't. Yeah, one is DreamWorks Television, which is the new woke She-Ra. And the other one is being produced by Mattel TV, which is an offshoot, I believe, of the Mattel Movies division that Matt was talking about earlier. So they're completely two separate entities. Now, what this means is that She-Ra probably won't show up on He-Man, and He-Man's never going to show up on that She-Ra show. That's already been stated, even though she's like, oh, I'm not thinking about it. It's not so much that you're not thinking about it. It's so much that Mattel's not going to let you touch that character. Trust me. And that's why. It's because that's separate license completely. And this has to do with a lot of the same stuff we always report on Midnight's Edge. So I do suggest you check out our latest video if you want more info on that. But yeah, as far as my thoughts on the show, since I didn't really get there, I do think that this is going to be something interesting. Kevin Smith is a fan of a lot of things, and generally when he's a fan, he takes care of things. He's come close to making a lot of things. I have a feeling that like if he would have been able to make Green Hornet, it would have been better than what we got. It probably similar, but better.
What are the odds that Seth Rogen's going to voice Skeletor or Prince Adam in this?
Hey, where's Orko? He's got the weed, right?
He's got the good stuff. All right, so let's move on to our next thing, which is a little bit of a inside Hollywood thing as well, and that is this article from Fortune magazine, where it says, magical accounting. Here's what we know so far about the whistleblower allegations at Disney. And this is by Eric Sherman. And for those of you who don't know, a whistleblower came out from Disney's accounting department claiming that Disney overinflated their earnings by $6 billion. And that they're basically pumping up the value of their company in order to defraud stockholders. And in this article, it says, Disney is supposed to be in the business of making magic, but not with its numbers. A former senior financial analyst for the Walt Disney Company has filed multiple claims with the Securities and Exchange Commission about the company's accounting practices, according to a report by MarketWatch. Sander Kubra claims that employees at Disney falsely inflated revenue for years. Some of the methods include pretending that complimentary golf games or other free or discounted promotional services and products were paid for in full. Software flaws supposedly allowed these and other misstatements to be entered. Disney, in a statement to Fortune, denied the claims had any merit. But here's what we know so far. Little transactions, big numbers. Public companies live and die among investors by their revenues and profits. That's why regulators require full and accurate financial statements so investors can see a company's performance. Kubra claims that Disney manipulated a lot of small transactions, apparently at the theme parks, misrepresenting their actual value, and when totaled, significantly increased the company's revenues. She says she told the board, in Disney's 2009 fiscal year, the Parks and Resorts Businesses Unit showed $10.7 billion in revenue. Kubra said that the number could have been inflated by upwards of $6 billion. She claims to have reported the problem to Disney officials and the company's board. Cooper contacted the SEC in 2017 and was fired a month after. If Cooper's concerns really had been brought to a board level, you would think that if there was anything there, they would have dealt with it, said James Angel, a professor of finance at Georgetown University McDonough School of Business. Disney says Cooper was fired for cause. A company spokesperson sent a statement to Fortune that said Cooper was fired for cause in 2017, had persistently made patently false claims over 2 years, and that the claims had been thoroughly investigated and found to be utterly baseless. In addition, it also said that MarketWatch has been aware of these facts for months. Investors aren't too worried. Shares were down by only 0.12%, suggesting that investors were not terribly alarmed. Some experts that spoke with Fortune expressed doubts about the larger claims. This is the first report I've heard of, said Joseph Bonner, a senior analyst for technology, media, and communications at equities analysis firm Angus Research Company. I have to say that $6 billion sounds a little unbelievable. Disney is a master of financial engineering, Angel said. If there's a loophole available, would they have exploited it? I don't doubt it. Would they have committed financial fraud? I'd be shocked. He thought that if anything had happened, it was more likely a mid-level manager trying to push their numbers up, but that internal auditors would probably have uncovered the practice. The whistleblower says she's met with the SEC multiple times. Cooper told MarketWatch she had multiple phone and in-person meetings with SEC personnel, and this could be the type of whistleblower report the SEC would take seriously, although there is no evidence that the agency is even undertaking an investigation. If they get a complaint from a financial analyst at a publicly traded company alleging accounting irregularities, my bet is that they would give it a second look rather than quickly dismissing it, said Amy Dunbar, General Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer at Bel Air Investment Advisors and former SEC enforcement attorney. And who knows what she told the SEC? She could have a lot more detail. So ever since this story broke, people have been pointing to the disappointing Q2 or Q3 numbers that Disney just recently had for their theme parks, where Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, launched. It underperformed. Disney had, didn't perform as well as expected, and people are pointing to this as proof that Disney is cooking the books. Now, what I want to know from you guys, my expert business analysis panel, is who should we believe here? Should we believe the whistleblower? Should we believe Disney? And do you think that there's any merit to these claims? So, Jay, you were just at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Why don't we start with you, because you have firsthand knowledge of how the park is doing.
Now let the hate boner flow through you.
Well, I got an early access pass, and my brother hooked that up. So, in your face, Christopher Harloff, who complained about not getting his own. So, in your face, right here. And so we got. I was able to get like 2 cantina drinks, 2 glasses of milk, a green and a blue. They didn't give me a bag, which I really wanted, but my brother, we were able to buy stuff at like a huge discount. So my brother bought one of those holocrons and those things like that. And I'm listen, man. I hate The Last Jedi. I was trying to be as honest as I could about Galaxy's Edge. It's a one and done. Like, there's no excitement to go back. You literally got to walk through the mall to get to the Millennium Falcon. So when you make it, and then if they tuck the Falcon away, so it's kind of like when you make a right, it opens up and you're like, okay, that's cool. Like it was beautiful. It was everything I want, but once you take all the photos and you look at it, you're kind of like, all right, what else is there to do? We'll go. Then you got to walk back through the stores. The ride is terrible. Like I can't believe they messed that one up. So I just think that my brother, who's not like into all this fandom and all this stuff, his honest opinion was they better rebrand this in a couple of years because it's
all right. So. This report about the fraud was primarily focused on the park end of things, where this whistleblower said, hey, Disney inflated their park revenue by $6 billion. Mr. Nerd, what do you think about that? Do you think it's possible to inflate revenues by $6 billion, especially for something that is as popular as the Disney parks?
I'm not an accountant, so I can't claim some kind of expertise on this. But my knee-jerk reaction is, what are the taxes on $6 billion you got to pay for claiming that as a profit that you didn't make. Like that sounds really counterproductive for your company, and it doesn't sound like a good business model at all, even if you are trying to fool your investors. Like I said, my knee-jerk reaction is this is probably bull crap. That person is seems like a disgruntled employee. She was fired. I think one of the articles I read said that she was fired for taking her coworkers to HR on unsubstantiated claims of all different types, I suppose. So it sounds like this person is just trying to get attention, especially with the amount of clout that Disney has and the amount of backlash that comes with big companies like that. And I don't buy it, but I mean, if it comes out later that something's true, it's probably going to be substantially less than $6 billion. It'll probably be, like they said, some mid-level manager trying to cook some books to make himself look better to get a promotion or something. I don't think it's going to be company-wide. I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, like to add up all these small things like, golf passes and stuff like that to equal $6 billion. I mean, how many of these freebies were they giving out?
That's a lot of golf. That's a lot of golf.
Yeah. Mr. Vader, what do you think about this in terms of do you think that Disney is discrediting a legit whistleblower, or do you think this whistleblower is kind of like she's got a vendetta of some type?
Like Salty said, I am far from a expert in this area of things. I don't know. I think it just sounds kind of crazy. I think she's probably full of crap. It's just, I don't know, really. It seems crazy. I feel like they $6 billion, that's a lot of $25,000 droids they sold at Galaxy.
But over how many years is this $6 billion supposed to be added up, though? That's my question, because I have a little different outlook on this. So,
yeah, well, I mean, it's probably a couple years. But Tom, let me ask you this. So typical Hollywood accounting, they try to tell people that they don't make as much money as they normally do.
Oh, yeah.
But like with this one, it does have to do with the Disney parks, and the Disney parks are a huge part of Disney's profit. So what are your thoughts on this?
Like, I got to go here soon, so I'm going to try and keep this as quick as possible, because I think you have another story you want to touch on yet. But there's a few key points I want to approach here with this. Now, I don't know how accurate this is, but one report I heard said that to kind of answer one of, I can't remember if it was Jay or Salty who brought it up. I think it was Salty, about the whole tax thing counterintuitively. Well, what they would do was supposedly or allegedly would take things like merchandise, which are higher taxes. They would re-ring them up in the system as food, so there's less tax taken out. And right there's profit in their pocket. So there was a lot of little things like that go into this. And again, now the other point I want to touch on, this lady worked for the company for 18 years. It's not like she was just there for a few years. This was a career. And even if she did turn in people to HR, it seems like they didn't have any problems with her turning people into HR as long as they were working for her. But now the moment she's a whistleblower, she's the worst person that they ever had working for, but they let her work for them for 18 years. So that part doesn't make sense. Now, as far as cooking the books on this, oh yeah, companies do this kind of shit all the time. They get caught all the time. And do I think this is real? Yeah. Now the 6 billion, I think that's a number that's added up over years and years and years and years. I don't think that's like a 1-year deal. I really don't. The other part of this, again, is if the SEC is going to investigate it or not. That's the main question. According to Disney, they said they investigated it and found nothing wrong. That's Disney investigating it, though. Of course, they're not going to find anything wrong, and even if they did, they're not going to say it publicly. Now, do I think this is something that could spread into other parts of the business? Oh, hell yeah. We've seen similar tactics, if it's true, according to some people, when it came to, well, look at everything that surrounded Captain Marvel, for instance, everything. And I mean, despite any parts of it, you can say, oh, that's just conspiracy. There's too much circumstantial evidence piled on top of circumstantial evidence piled on circumstance to say that there's not at least some type of small fire there. So to think that a company like this could do something like this is out of the realm of possibility. Oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. They probably do it every day. It's just, I've worked at so many different businesses and places where I've been asked to do shit like this myself. And in fact, you'll get in trouble for it, and they'll throw your ass under the bus. Trust me. It's just a matter of who says what first and where. And as far as the movie business goes, like Matt was saying, it all depends on who's asking. That's how much money they made or lost. It all depends on who's asking.
All right, so it is an interesting thing because people are pointing at this as like Disney trying to cover their butts for lower than expected earnings potential, and whether or not this is going to affect them going forward. But I mean, at this point, who knows? I don't think this is going to go anywhere, and if there is something, I'm sure the SEC will find it out. But it just seems odd to me that I think Disney's the 5th biggest company in America. I'm not sure they'd be able to get away with something like this if it was actually true.
It's all
really little things. See, there's the little details. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, Matt Vader, but yeah, it's in the little details. Because this has been long enough. When I worked for Movie Gallery, they pulled shit like this. They pulled shit like and they're a dead business now, so I'll fucking say it. I don't care. It's been long enough. They used to pull shit with the cards. They would do a lot of like gift cards and crap like that. They would pull that kind of shenanigans. And they used that as part of the reason why they fired me just before the company went under, as to one of the reasons they fired me, because I did a quote unquote gift card incorrectly. So they saw it as theft to the company. It's like, you motherfuckers were the one telling me to do this shit. Oh, it was a big blowout, and I was almost part of some civil suit, but it don't matter anymore. I walked away from the whole thing I just washed my hands of the whole situation.
Matt, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, so they just bought Fox, right? And wouldn't there have been a lot of like investigations looking into this kind of thing prior to?
There was an antitrust investigation to make sure that it was a legal merger, I believe, by the SEC or FCC, something like that.
So, I mean, I just think if there was some shenanigans going on, I would think that it would have been brought up at that point.
But that's what I was getting to, is that's how they hide this stuff. They hide it in ways that you won't find it. And that's what this whistleblower is trying to say. I believe if they actually are doing it. That was my point. Sorry.
Okay, guys, so moving on, I want to talk about a big rumor that it refuses to die. And this is something that just irks me to no end. And this is the rumor that Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy is dead. He's been fired. He's not directing any of the movies. He's not writing his trilogy. Nothing's going forward. And this rumor has surfaced many different times. And each time it comes up, I always say, no, this is wrong. And people insist that it's right, and then someone official comes out and says, no, this is wrong, and then it goes away, and then a little while later it comes back. And yesterday, I'm not going to reveal who put this out on Twitter, because I don't want to give the account any credibility here, but someone on Twitter made something up and posted it as inside information coming from Disney that Rian Johnson has been removed from Lucasfilm and that his trilogy is no longer going forward. And we have this article here from Bounding Into Comics, which just lost all credibility to me as a news source for even posting this. And the headline is Rumor Rian Johnson's Star Wars Trilogy Axed by Lucasfilm. And what I want to do here right now with you guys is I want to lay out my case for why Rian Johnson is not fired. And you guys can be the jury, and you can tell me whether or not I'm full of BS and who you think is correct in this. And basically, when everyone was saying Kathleen Kennedy was going to get fired, I was one of the lone voices out there saying, no, she's going to be renewed. She's not going anywhere. In fact, she's going to be there till 2030, probably. Everyone called me crazy, and I was hoping I was wrong, but it turns out I wasn't. In this case, I do hope I'm wrong. I hope that Rian Johnson is out of Lucasfilm before his trilogy starts getting made. But as of right now, I believe that he is entrenched. He's not going anywhere. Disney is fully on board with him writing his own trilogy. And this is the segment where I'm going to tell you guys why I believe this. So as you know, Rian Johnson has a movie coming out this Thanksgiving called Knives Out. It's a fairly low budget kind of murder mystery type thing where he kind of deconstructs the Agatha Christie trope of the gentleman detective who is isolated in a house with a group of suspects, kind of like Murder on the Orient Express, except in a southern setting. And if we look over here, I want to point to this article from complex.com where it kind of talks about Rian Johnson and the budget for his upcoming movie. And it says that the official budget numbers for Knives Out have not yet been released, but IMDb estimates the cost of around $40 million. And the cast features Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Lika Stanfield. So basically, Rian Johnson, I want to lay out his strategy here because a lot of people kind of don't understand what's going on in terms of Hollywood. I think Rian Johnson was well aware that his film was divisive and that he was getting a lot of backlash. And what could have happened after The Last Jedi was he could have gone off and directed a $100 million, $200 million movie and done another A-list film. But instead, he retreated and he did a lower budget movie by getting these big name actors on board who are big names overseas. And in exchange for a cut of the back end of the film, they agreed to take a price cut for their front end. So he was able to make the movie a lot cheaper. And I believe the reason for this was that he wanted to ensure that this movie was a financial hit right out the bat for Disney. Now, keep in mind that this movie of his, Knives Out, was $40 million. Okay. Now, this is news where at the Toronto Film Festival, a company called MRC buys the world rights to the Knives Out movie. I'm just going to read you kind of like the first couple paragraphs here. In what sets a high bar for the biggest deal at the 2018 Toronto Film Festival, Media Rights Capital has acquired worldwide rights to Knives Out, a contemporary murder mystery that will star Daniel Craig as a detective assigned to solve a crime with Rian Johnson directing. The film is now fully financed and ready to shoot in November, with Craig starring before he returns to James Bond 25, which is in the process of getting a new director after the exit of Danny Boyle. Johnson, who wrote the script and is producing with partner Ram Bergman, will direct this as his first feature film since the $1.3 billion global grossing Star Wars The Last Jedi, and before he and Bergman return to architect a new trilogy in Star Wars universe that Johnson is writing to direct. There were multiple parties interested in an auction held by CAA Media Finance and Film Nation, but MRC was the most aggressive in essentially greenlighting the film. Its commitment is upwards of $40 million. So the movie's budget was $40 million, and it just so happens that the film, before it was even went into production, its worldwide exclusive rights were bought for $40 million. So this movie was basically paid for before it even got off the ground. It's a strong back end for Craig and the filmmakers. The film is best described, blah, blah, blah. MRC will approach distributors in the next several weeks. Its financing commitment eases the pressure to lock that down. The deal was different from the Cannes frenzy for 355, the international spy thriller that Simon Kinberg will direct with Jessica Chastain producing. CAA Media Finance and Film Nation came out of Cannes without about 30 territorial deals, including one for Universal to release domestically. That process has been pushed to a future date for Knives Out. So for those of you who want to unpack this, CAA Media Finance, or Creative Artists Agency, which is one of the biggest talent agencies in Hollywood, which Rian Johnson is a client of, they whipped up this bidding frenzy at the Toronto Film Festival over Knives Out, got everyone excited about it, and this MRC group came in and spent a ton of money, $40 million, to get the rights to this film, which they then used to finance it. So the film was basically made for free. And how does MRC make money off of this? Well, if we go to this Deadline article, there was this Berlin European film market that took place in Germany. And there's even more information here about how the bidding wars were whipped up for Knives Out. And if we take a look at this in the context of this story from Variety, Knives Out sells to KKR's new distribution company in Germany. So MRC is out there selling territorial rights to Knives Out based off the strength of the cast in these international territories. They're making a buttload of money off of selling the rights to this film that was made for $40 million. And basically, this is pure profit now. This is pure profit, and this movie hasn't even come out yet. And so, executives at Disney are looking at this, and it's like, well, Knives Out is guaranteed to make money. Now, in terms of the financial end of things, Rian Johnson's risk aversion tactic here is very good, because if he had come out with a $100 million movie and it had unperformed because of the backlash from Last Jedi, Disney would think twice about going forward with him. But instead of doing that, he scaled back. He went with a smaller budget, kind of almost independent film, and even though it's being distributed by Lionsgate. And because of this, he's guaranteed to show that on the books his movies are going to be profitable. Now, to continue with this is an article from Comics Beat from the Las Vegas, what do you call it? The Las Vegas CinemaCon coverage. And basically, Rian Johnson was at that year's CinemaCon, and he premiered the first footage from Knives Out there. And basically, he said that, like, if we look at this right here, Johnson added that he had been working on the script for 10 years until MRC and Lionsgate stepped up and came aboard. He also teased that after finishing Knives Out, he will be returning to a galaxy far, far away, so that Star Wars trilogy of his still seems to be happening. And this took place in April of 2019, so April of this year. That's just like 5 months ago. Now, in addition to that, at Star Wars Celebration, which was also in April, there was a quote from Kathleen Kennedy where she basically said that, we're not just looking forward to the next 3 years, what that might be. We're talking about this in terms of a trilogy, Kennedy said. And then she goes on to talk about Benioff and Weiss as they finish Game of Thrones, they're going to segue into Star Wars. Kennedy said of Benioff and Weiss, they're working very closely with Rian. So Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson within the same month came out and both said that his trilogy is still going forward. He's still working on Star Wars. He's still involved in Lucasfilm. Now, here's something that's very interesting that not a lot of people are talking about, okay? So basically, when a movie gets kind of going, the studio will create offices for a movie where they can start putting staffers in to work on the day-to-day type of stuff. Now, if you're in the development phase and you're definitely going forward, they can create these offices that early, or they can wait until a movie's been greenlit and go and do it then. And Disney kind of does these things in blocks where they create, their own separate entities for each movie. And that's pretty much what's been going on with Star Wars. And I want to read this article from CBR just to kind of give you guys some context here. After Episode 9 debuts in December, production will seemingly begin on the standalone trilogies set in Star Wars universe from Game of Thrones creators David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, The Last Jedi director Rian Johnson. New reports suggest Disney has the latter actually already has a production name. According to Fantha Tracks, Disney has registered a production company that's expected to work on the first film of Rian Johnson's trilogy by the name of E&E Industries UK Limited. While this isn't a working title per se, Johnson's Star Wars: The Last Jedi was registered under the company's Space Bear Industries UK Limited with the working title of Space Bear. This doesn't mean that filming is close to commencing, but it indicates Lucasfilm is ready to employ staff under the banner of E&E Industries. Recently, rumors suggested the future of Rian Johnson's trilogy was in doubt, but he himself has since debunked those rumors. This isn't the first time it's been rumored Johnson was off the project, blah, blah, blah. But the interesting thing here is that Disney has secured a company with the name E&E Industries specifically for Rian Johnson's trilogy. Now, my guess is that they have employed staff, and Rian Johnson is getting things set up over there while he's doing the other projects. But the fact that he has a company in the UK that is gearing up for the production of his trilogy, the fact that Kathleen Kennedy and he himself has publicly stated multiple times that he's working with Lucasfilm, he's working on this new trilogy, and the fact that Knives Out is guaranteed to make money, he's basically covered all of his bases here. And this is all evidence that his trilogy is a lock. It's going forward. He's not going anywhere. And I've said before, and I'll say it again, that the only way that he's going to get booted off this project is if Kathleen Kennedy gets removed, if the Benioff and Weiss and Episode 9 movies all bomb, and if the people running Disney decide that he's not financially successful enough to take on the Star Wars franchise. So, guys, that's my case for Rian Johnson being not fired. I want to hear from you guys. Tom, I know you have to get going soon, so let's start with you. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it's interesting. The one person who hasn't really ever mentioned the Rian Johnson trilogy, to my knowledge, since all this, and has mentioned Benioff and Weiss and many other things, has been Bob Iger. Now, one other thing that you keep pointing out, I think on your own, and even though we keep saying trilogy, is he's only attached to direct one movie and just set up a trilogy, right? And when you and I have even debated on how much the whole Benioff and Weiss thing might cross over with his, or if they are the same thing, or if they're totally unrelated. And these things could change over time. I think you're right about Knives Out. I don't think that's going to have a play into this either way. Just like I don't think that the Book of Henry, whatever it was called, I don't think that had anything to do with Trevorrow getting booted from the Episode 9 either. I think that was totally internal arguments. I think they use that as an excuse and a reason publicly to fire him, but I don't think that was the reason. As far as Johnson goes, I think you're right. I don't think that he's going to be out unless something happens to where Kathleen Kennedy is gone as well, because those two are peas in a pod. Other than that, I really have nothing more to add to this other than I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm sure it's going to happen just because, like you said, they set up these separate companies, and if the company's already set up, then that means some type of pre-production at least has already commenced, even though he himself keeps saying this, yeah, it's happening, but, it's going to be a long way off. It's going to be years. It's going to be, years and years before you see this thing, which to me sounds like, oh, yeah, I got a girlfriend, but she lives in Canada, and you'll never meet her. Kind of like one of those things to me. It's just, yeah.
All right. So, Mr. Drunk 3PO, I laid out my case here. Who do you think is right? Do you think Rian Johnson's out the door, or do you think he's here to stay?
He ain't. Sadly, and he's here to stay. And you know why these articles leak or people make them up? Because it definitely drives traffic to whatever they're trying to push. It really does. If I put out a tweet and I said breaking news, I just got a source that Rian Johnson's trilogy's out, it will, it'll have a lot of traffic to my Twitter account, whether it's positive or negative. But because we in the fandom people either love him or they hate him. I don't know if there's much of a middle ground here. So.
Okay,
I'm not going to see it. Like, listen, I'm not calling for boycotts or anything, but I just can't stand the man. So I'm just like, go have fun. Go make your little Star Wars story. Have fun.
Mr. Salty Nerd, one of the things that makes you so salty is this outrage culture where people just make crap up, hammer it into the ground with YouTube videos and tweets and Facebook posts, and they basically exploit it in order to get attention and get more followers and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts on this?
I'm in agreement with you. I think we're stuck with him for a while unless there's some crazy major changes in Lucasfilm management. He's going to be around for a while. So love him or hate him, get used to him because he's going to be here. And I hope he's not. I hope they later on move on and something changes and he goes in a different direction. That's my personal opinion. But like you said, what makes me more irritated than anything else is watching YouTubers use these topics to drive fans into getting involved in their channels. And I see it as them, it's unethical. I see it as them taking advantage of people who might be less informed than we are, or who might just knee-jerk reaction into the video and go on there and hit the like button and subscribe and do all this stuff because they think that these people are touting truth when they're really not. And they know they're not. And, they know it's bullcrap because they're just as involved as we are. So that's what irritates me most. I don't like seeing those people get support. I don't like seeing those people fool fans into thinking something that's true that's really not. And I don't see it as being any different than what CNN does to their their fans and what other news stations that we claim fake news. Like, well, guess what, guys? You're fake news if you're touting this kind of stuff for clicks. So that irritates me more than anything. But I don't want to see Rian Johnson make more movies. I think he ruined one of the most iconic characters in cinema history, and I don't want to see him do any more. But it's an unfortunate reality is they're looking at the money that they're going to make, and his movies make money. So it's bottom line.
Now, Mr. Vader, I know that you, more than anyone, wishes that these rumors were true. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you think I'm right, or do you think I'm off base here?
I think you lay out a pretty good case, Matt. I think he hasn't gone anywhere as of yet. I think I don't think it's a lost cause. I think depending on what Episode 9 does and the popularity of the Google Plus series, I think that has a lot more of the story to tell. I think Disney and Lucasfilm are fools if they kept Rian Johnson on, because there was obviously a huge effect following The Last Jedi on Solo, and that was, I think that was a fan reaction to his movie, not fatigue or whatever they want to call it. He's toxic. He's a toxic filmmaker when it comes to the Star Wars brand, and that's not going to go away. So, but no, I think he's still there. I think he's still there, like you said, and hopefully not for much longer. But
well, I think he's going to be in there for the long haul. In fact, I kind of pick up on some signals that Kathleen Kennedy might be grooming him to take over should she step down, but which is the nightmare scenario.
Oh my God!
Like I said, they're just hints. Like, I don't know if he'd even want to do it, but
don't speak that into existence.
They're there.
I'm sorry, I just passed out. What happened?
Yeah, what the heck? Tom, say something funny quickly.
Jesus,
I died of a heart attack after that. I can't say shit.
But the big takeaway here is that I think that there's a broader issue in terms of how these rumors are handled in the fandom, in the sense that journalism nowadays seems to be, hey, somebody makes something up, they post it on Twitter or Reddit. Legitimate news sources then cite those as the source of these rumors. They put rumor in the title just to cover their butts and drive up people into a frenzy just to get those clickbait clicks to keep their lights on.
They're just doing it for clicks and money. It's totally fine. If they're open about that, it's totally okay, right?
Well, let's go to the source.
They're just playing on another level, bro. You're just not up to date with
I know
that.
he's being facetious, but my point is that this came from a tweet. And not from a tweet from a celebrity or anybody involved with anything. It just came from a random tweet, like Matt said.
Anonymous Twitter account.
And I said this in a private DM thing where we have a bunch of us or whatever. I say, this is the equivalent of somebody sticking their head out the window and yelling at their neighbor and say, hey, guess what I just heard about Cindy?
Yeah.
That's how much this to me means anything. Unless they have some significance, that you should ignore every damn tweet out there when it comes to this guy. I have a rumor bullshit. And I know we get poked constantly about our sources, but at least when it comes to our sources, when I'm talking to people like Matt in private, it's like, I try to I'm not going to tell you our sources, but I'll kind of give you a map. And at least then he kind of understands who I'm talking about in a way to where he kind of gets where I'm getting my info from, to where it's not just total shit we pull out the air.
Like you guys, you put your names out there, you put your faces out there. There's some accountability,
right?
Like when you're using a bad source. The people doing this stuff, they're anonymous.
Well,
we just had to anonymous, and they themselves are anonymous. So it's like, why should you believe anything you say?
Well, we just had to basically say one of our reports was bullshit yesterday in our video. The whole Wakandan. What's his face character from Spider-Man, the Hunter, Kraven
the Hunter.
Like, obviously that's bullshit. That's not happening. Especially if this has been going on for months and they haven't made a deal yet, because we were under the assumption this deal was pretty much done before the $1 billion mark was crossed. Everybody would have thought, well, this makes total sense. It's a win-win for everybody. Make the deal. No, they didn't make the deal. They've been fighting about it. But anyway, that's back to the first story.
Can I say one thing, Matthew?
Go ahead.
As long as I've known you, you've always been cool, calm, and collective. But when this tweet came out, I have never seen you so angry Like,
I
you
get
were
it.
just like, you're going after people. How dare you use this as a source? You have no credibility. How dare you even retweet this? How, man, you were just like, I was like, dang, Matthew is going hard on Twitter today.
I was
He's just gonna, like,
though.
I was getting him riled up in the DMs. I was like, Matt, you see this shit?
No, but he's got a point, and this is the kind of shit we do need to combat, because this
But-
is the kind of shit that's giving people in the fandom menace a bad name. This is the kind of shit that's giving
Exactly. Thank you.
a lot of people a bad name, is reporting on crap like this that is obvious nonsense unless it's coming from a credible source of some type. Even if it is a rumor, at least if it comes from a credible source, then it's something you can take seriously. You cannot take Harriet sticking her head out the window and saying something about Cindy being serious. I'm sorry. It just
Jay,
doesn't work
I
that
got to
way.
give you some context to my impatience with this guy.
I'm getting salty just thinking about it.
So this account, it's been popping up more and more in my feed. People have been kind of like tagging me in posts that this account puts up. And they have been putting out stuff like, insider information about Blade being a Muslim, the Lord of the Rings diversity casting, like a bunch of unfounded rumors that seem to gain traction. And the killer thing about the way that this account's going about doing this stuff is that it's never unbelievable what they post. There's always a kernel of truth, and like it could be true. So that's what makes it catch on. That's what makes it dangerous, is because like people could legitimately believe that, yes, this stuff is happening. And so early on, back when the Blade Muslim thing came out, I tweeted at the account and I said, hey, do you have a source for this? And the person said, oh, I can't reveal my source because the source is myself and I get a lot of insider info. And if I were to reveal myself, I get fired. And apparently this person who runs the account works at a studio and hears a lot of stuff. And so I'm like, well, okay, no big deal. But then this account's getting more and more popular, and it's getting quoted more and more the more bull crap that it posts. And so every time it posts something, I'm like, hey, can you give us a source on this? And they're just like, no. And I'm like, can you at least, reveal your name? They're like, no. And so I'm like, when this came out, I couldn't hold back my anger any longer, because I was just like, look, there is no credibility behind these like, this is literally someone making stuff up. And what really got me was that Bounding Into Comics article.
Yeah, I was like, release the Kraken.
I sent you that and I was like, fuck.
I was like, really, Bounding Into Comics? Really? Like an unsourced, uncredited, anonymous Twitter account posts a rumor that it says can't be verified until December. It's like that's the brilliant thing that this account's doing, is like it's always saying that like, oh, details incoming, and it's doing stuff that's like far enough out where you can't disprove it. And so like that adds like an air of legitimacy to it. But honestly, it's just like, this is literally someone who's in their mother's basement making stuff up and passing it off as inside information. And it drives me crazy.
Attention.
Yeah.
He's very polite about the way he replies to you, though.
Yes, he is. Well,
Yeah,
I don't attack him personally. I attack the information that he's putting out.
But Matt's right. This is exactly what I was saying before. This is exactly the kind of thing that gets out there and gives, people like us and Nerdrotic and Doomcock and anybody else who reports on any of this kind of stuff. I mean, we don't, but I'm just saying, if we were to, it's the type of stuff that, if we run with that, it's going to give us a bad name. And we try to avoid having to correct ourselves. Like I said earlier, we don't want to have to say something we said was bullshit. But you know what? Once in a while, you get past some bad info. Now, that doesn't mean that Disney and Marvel and Feige didn't have plans to do that with Kraven the Hunter. What happened, though, is this shit broke down. So now that's not going to happen either way unless they come to some agreement. So my point is that happens sometimes. That's just one of those happenstance. But no, this is straight up somebody just coming out and saying, no, I don't have a source. I'm just saying this because I think this is what's going to happen. And I'm presenting it like it's news, like it's some kind of rumor or leak.
It's the Chicken Little syndrome, like where, if you scream the sky is falling long enough, people drown you out, and then your legitimate criticisms get dismissed.
Yeah. And Tom, there's a big difference between, I don't have a problem if a YouTuber says, does one video where they think there's a news scoop and they talk about it real quick, and then they realize they're wrong and they go back and correct themselves, or they say, hey, we got some bad information. That doesn't bother me at all. What bothers me is people who purposefully mine this kind of content day after day, 2 videos
Oh
a day.
yeah. And we get accused of it all the time, and that's the shitty part is we don't run with a lot of this crap.
Yeah, I mean, the people who do though, it just irritates me when I see them. When I see them growing following, and then when somebody calls them out for it, like, "Hey, dude, this is bullcrap," then they attack you and say, "Oh, you just don't understand what I'm doing," blah blah blah. I don't understand how people can be supportive of that kind of thing.
Well, it's an echo chamber, and they want to hear it, and especially if you got a hate boner right now for Star Wars, and you're like, I mean, I'm not happy with the way things Star Wars are going, but I'm not going to go out of my way to hate on it. I'm not going to go out there and just start bashing people who like anything. I have enough people coming after me for what I say about it, so I don't need to add to the problem. It's like, it's just one of those things where you just got to kind of look at it like, you could sensationalize this stuff for clicks, and we do in a certain way when it comes to certain things, but at the same time, where people have asked us, if you guys get something that's a positive thing, would you run with it? And we're like, oh yeah. But a lot of times, either A, it's stuff that we've put in things and nobody's watched it or noticed, or B, it ends up getting out in the main news before we get a chance to do anything about it. I've had plenty of stuff in the past where it's like, oh, I got this, and we will run with it. Next thing you know, it's already in Deadline Hollywood or Variety or something like that. And it's like, oh, bummer. It's like, so there's nothing you can do about it. It's one of those things. And a lot of times positive news, unless it's something people are really, really into, it just goes by the wayside. I've done a lot of Bill and Ted coverage that's positive, and people just don't notice it.
Well, I'm going to start checking that stuff out for you, but I got to support good streamers.
The long and short of it is Rian Johnson's not going anywhere. He's not fired. His trilogy is still going forward, and he's probably going to be involved in the Benioff and Weiss trilogy. Anyway, guys, Jay, I know that you have to go. Do you want to tell people where they can find out more about you before you head out?
All right, just head on over to Drunk 3PO, and I talk a lot about Star Wars, a lot about Galaxy's Edge, since I live right next door. So if you want to hear anything about that, you can check that out there.
I recently watched your video about that. People should check that out. I think everyone should, just to see what it's like. I mean,
it was a really good video, solid video, man.
I really like the kid that was swimming in the puddle.
Wasn't that great?
Yeah, it's like this is the best ride here.
Galaxy's Edge.
All right. So if you go on YouTube and you search for Drunk 3PO, you can find his channel there. He's also on Twitter at Drunk 3PO. So be sure to follow him on Twitter. And Jay, thank you so much for coming on the stream today. I appreciate your insights and your humor.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me. Much love, everybody. I'm going to Taco Bell. There's my.
That sounds so good.
Oh, lucky.
All right, so Tom, if you can stick around for a little bit, because I know that
I'm working in the background. So if I end up missing you, say my name. Do apologize, but yes, I'm still here. So yes.
Okay, like we're going to be talking about Star Trek Discovery now.
Yeah, I was kind of holding out for that one. So yeah.
Yeah. So I want to talk about Star Trek Discovery in the context that there have been a lot of rumblings on the interwebs lately about how Star Trek Discovery is a failure. They don't understand how it keeps getting renewed. It's costing CBS All Access tons of money. It's not making a profit for them. And I feel like a lot of these rumors concerning Star Trek Discovery come from a general ignorance of how different a streaming service operates than a regular broadcast TV network. And recently there was like some rumblings about a Google Trends graph that shows a declining interest in Star Trek Discovery versus the movies versus the original TV shows and stuff along those natures. And I always find it interesting getting kind of wonky and in the weeds about how some of this stuff operates. So Alex, Matt, Tom, do any of you guys know about how broadcast television turns a profit?
Not a lot.
Advertising,
viewership. That's about it.
So the way it works is basically there's this thing called ratings, and when you have a broadcast TV show, the higher it's rated, which basically equates to the more people who watch it, the more money you can charge for advertising. And so a high-rated show can charge a lot of money for advertising and make a lot of profit for the network that's airing it. And a low-rated show can't charge as much for advertising, and if the advertising doesn't meet the cost of the show or isn't profitable enough, the show gets canceled and replaced with something that can hopefully get higher ratings. And the way the ratings system works is there's this service called the Nielsen ratings, which basically is a company that goes out and gets like a sample size of the general TV watching audience, and they monitor what these people watch. And then they extrapolate from that and figure out, okay, well, X number of people are watching this show, and therefore the ratings are this, and then the networks take that and kind of figure out how much they charge for advertising based off that. But it's a very unscientific, well, it is scientific, but it's a very kind of not accurate way of figuring out how popular a show is, because you're taking it from a small sample size and extrapolating it. Now, the difference with streaming is that people who run the streaming service, because it's direct to consumer, okay, they know exactly what their metrics are. They know how many people are subscribed. They know how many people are watching. They know for how long they're watching. They know all these different metrics, which helps them to figure out whether or not a show is profitable for them. And one of the biggest metrics that streaming services look at is subscriber retention, because it doesn't matter how many of the shows are being watched. It just matters how long these people are being subscribed to. Now, a caveat to that is something like Hulu or CBS All Access, which offers a subscription tier that includes commercials. So there's also the commercial advertising aspect to this. Now, what I want to go over just real quick are some of the subscriber metrics that these streaming services use. I'm going to use Netflix as an example for this article. And then we're going to dive into why ratings don't matter for Star Trek Discovery, and why Star Trek Discovery is actually a bona fide hit for CBS All Access, and thus is going to be renewed for a long, long time, and everyone's jobs in the Star Trek front are safe. So in this article from allyourscreens.com, it kind of goes over the 5 streaming data points that matter more than ratings, at least for Netflix. And it's a very interesting article, so if you're into this stuff, you can check out the link when I post it. But the top 5 metrics are churn rates and cost of customer acquisition. So how much it costs for a streamer to pull in a new subscriber, and how many of those subscribers unsubscribe after subscribing. That's the churn rate. How many active subscribers does the service have? This is a big thing, because this is their monthly revenue. So if you have 100 million subscribers paying $8 a month, you're making $800 million a month. How many subscribers does the service actually have? And it says most of the large streaming services provide reasonably accurate quarterly subscriber numbers, but it's much less transparent with the smaller niche services, as is the case of CBS All Access. Its numbers are combined with its sister Showtime, so it's unclear what its actual subscriber numbers might be. And this is a very interesting point, because when we're talking about CBS All Access, which is the service that airs Star Trek Discovery in particular, they're kind of bundled in with the Showtime direct-to-consumer streaming app. So the numbers we get from CBS All Access aren't accurate because they're combined with another service. The fourth one is how many of these subscriptions are discounted. And this was kind of interesting to me, because this says, this is a question that is of special interest to Hulu, which offers a number of subscriptions at a discounted rate or as part of a bundle. For instance, you can get Hulu bundled for free with a Spotify family subscription, or get the ad-supported version free when you subscribe to Hulu Live Television. Disney has also announced it will bundle Hulu into a package with ESPN Plus and the upcoming Disney Plus service for a discounted rate. Nearly every streaming service offers some sort of promotional or discounted pricing, but Hulu in particular seems to have a large number of less than market rate subscriptions. So even though you can say Hulu has 24 million subscribers, how many of those are actually paying the full amount per month? And that's a very interesting point. Finally, it says, where are the new subscribers coming from? Thanks to the success of Amazon channels, every platform from Roku to your cable company have added the ability to subscribe to streaming services through them. And this is an interesting point, because if you go through Amazon or Roku or whatever, you can actually subscribe to all the different streaming services, CBS All Access, HBO Now, all this other stuff. And when Disney Plus comes out, I'm sure you'll be able to do it through them. And it's basically a way of pulling in the user base of something like an Amazon Prime and getting them to pay off, to these other services. But that third-party subscription integration comes at a price, typically a few dollars per new subscription. So if you subscribe to like CBS All Access through Amazon Prime gets like $1 or $2 off of that subscription, and CBS All Access gets the rest. But aside from the initial flat payment, which can fall into cost of customer acquisition part of question 1, a more important metric is the percentage of total new subscribers that are coming from these third parties. If it's high, that suggests the service has exhausted its pool of easy-to-capture new subscribers, which points to an eventual slowing down and stalling of growth. And that's what Netflix is kind of running into right now, and that its growth is being stalled because it's kind of hit saturation point. And with all these new competitors coming in, people are having more choice, so they're not going with Netflix. Now, how does this relate to Star Trek Discovery and CBS All Access? Well, let's go to this CNBC article where it says CBS reaches its 8 million streaming subscriber goals 2 years early. So for those of you who don't know, when CBS All Access kind of launched and did its big push with Star Trek Discovery, its goal was something like 4 million subscribers, something like that. And then after the first season of Discovery, CBS All Access came out and said, we're looking to try to hit 8 million subscribers by 2022. And the service actually hit that goal 2 years early. And this is between both CBS All Access and Showtime. And it's believed that's kind of an even split. So basically, CBS All Access has 4 million subscribers and Showtime has 4 million subscribers. But they hit their benchmark early. And so now the company has raised its goal for 2022 from 16 million subscribers to 25 million subscribers. So CBS is very bullish on their prospect for growth on their streaming network. Now, to kind of dive deeper into this, CBS, this is a article from Forbes where it says CBS All Access and Showtime over-the-top services, which is basically just streaming services, subscribers surged 71% in the first quarter. I'm just going to redo the first couple of paragraphs of this article for context. CBS, which just renewed Jordan Peele's buzzy reboot of The Twilight Zone for its CBS All Access service, said premium direct-to-consumer subscribers surged 71% in the first quarter. And keep in mind, the first quarter is when the second season of Discovery also premiered. Subs have passed the 8 million mark a year earlier than anticipated. The numbers reflect both CBS All Access and Showtime's OTT services, and CBS did not break them out. The Peele executive produced and hosted series debuted April 1st, joining Star Trek Discovery and The Good Fight as popular originals, along with 10,000 episodes of CBS series and draws like College Sports Live, March Madness On Demand, and Big Brother Live feeds. CBS launched CBS All Access in 2014 and Showtime's OTT service the following year, and they're the centerpiece of the media conglomerate's growth strategy. And keep in mind, this was all kind of brainchilded by Les Moonves, who was the former CEO of CBS, who eventually got ousted off of a sexual harassment scandal. During a conference call to review first quarter earnings, acting CEO Joe Iannolo and digital chief Jim Lanzone, who was the guy who built out CBS All Access, said the direct-to-consumer segment is aiming for 25 million subs domestically by 2022, fueled in part by new distribution platforms like Apple TV, which is going to offer CBS All Access as a subscription service, much like Amazon Prime does. They also see a massive opportunity to grow overseas, and this is the really interesting part. To fuel the pipeline, Iannolo said CBS will invest $8 billion in content this year, up from $7 billion the year before, for its own array of services and for third parties, including Netflix and the upcoming Disney+. The focus on content will assure CBS a seat on the rocket ship of the digital future, Iannolo said. But the really interesting part here is how their focus is moving to an international audience. Because, as we're going to get into here, Netflix is big internationally. In fact, they're probably the biggest streaming service with the international audience. All the other streaming services are kind of focusing on the U.S. audience first, and this is how Netflix is keeping some of the rights to other studios' content in terms of displaying it overseas. But in this Deadline article, we say Star Trek Discovery and AFC Championship bring record subscribers, says CBS All Access. Now, one of the biggest metrics that we were talking about earlier was the cost of acquisition of a new subscriber, how many subscribers come in. And because of Star Trek's popularity, a lot of Star Trek fans subscribe to CBS All Access. But this is from January of this year, 2019. And the article says, CBS All Access says the weekend combo of the Season 2 Star Trek Discovery premiere and Sunday's AFC Championship game pushed new subscriber signups and unique viewers to record levels. According to CBS Interactive, CBS All Access added more subscribers in a single weekend than ever before, breaking the previous record set during the 2017 series premiere of Star Trek Discovery by plus 72%. And if you remember the article from this headline, subscribers surged 71%. In addition, this weekend also set the new record for unique viewers on CBS All Access. That's individual unique viewers. Because sometimes families sign up for these things and you get multiple people watching, but somehow they were able to track unique viewers. Specific numbers were not released. The return of our biggest original series hit, Star Trek Discovery, and this weekend's AFC Championship game have propelled CBS All Access to new record-breaking heights, said Mark DeVoise, President of and Chief Operating Officer, CBS Interactive. And this just goes into the AFC Championship game. But the big number here is that Star Trek Discovery Season 2 premiere precipitated a 72% increase in CBS subscribers, which is huge. And this is one of the reasons why CBS is putting a lot of emphasis on Star Trek, because this is the thing that helps them pull in subscribers. Now, the Hulu aspect, or the aspect of this that Star Trek Discovery is popular, especially among streaming, the CBS All Access streaming service, is kind of bandied by this Forbes article, where it says, a couple of stories have grabbed my attention recently. Firstly, there's the news via Observer.com that Hulu had an amazing 12 months and now claims around 17 million subscribers. That's nearly 42% growth. It's not all rosy for Hulu because Netflix boasts a more global reach, and this is how we were talking about the more international reach that Netflix has. Outside the US, Hulu doesn't really operate, which is part of the reason that Netflix claims 109 million worldwide subscribers. In the US, Netflix is more than twice as big as Hulu with nearly 53 million customers. Things get confusing when you factor in Amazon, though, which has 80 million Prime subscribers. It's not as easy to tell how many of these are using the video service, but Amazon makes nearly twice as much money on the Prime offering as Netflix did last year, $6.4 billion versus $2.29 billion. Amazon also spent $4.5 billion on productions last year, less than Netflix's annual spend of $8 billion. Now, Netflix likes to throw around money. They have no problem taking on debt to create content. But what's interested me, though, is that the Star Trek Discovery demand expressions, or better known as the number of people talking about the show, according to Parrot Analytics, Star Trek Discovery has more than 53 million people talking about it in the US. That beats The Walking Dead, which has around 46 million expressions. Netflix's Stranger Things also has a staggering 33 million within the US. So with this Google Trends chart that came out, it showed a decline in these interest in terms of Google searches for Star Trek Discovery. But here, Parrot Analytics is saying that 53 million people talk about this show in the US. And this leads us into this little tidbit, which is that Star Trek Discovery's budget was paid for by Netflix, not CBS. And this was a gambit that Les Moonves took back when he was in charge of CBS Studios. And what he did was basically he knew that Netflix was very big on getting a original new Star Trek show on their network, but he didn't want to give them the US rights. Because he knew that CBS All Access was not international, he decided to put out the international rights in a bidding war, and Netflix eventually won that bidding war. And it reportedly, according to this article, paid more than 100% of the cost of Star Trek Discovery in order to obtain the rights to distribute the series internationally, which is the bulk of Netflix's market. So basically, the show made a profit for CBS before it even aired on CBS All Access in the United States. And we've heard this a lot. In fact, Midnight's Edge commented on it in a number of their stories, where the Netflix deal paid for the first season of Star Trek Discovery, which was the most expensive season because they had to build all the sets, they had to get all the costumes created. And Les Moonves knew that future seasons of the series would cost less because all the costs were front-loaded on season one. But here's the interesting part here, and this is an article from Red Def, reddef.com. And if we go down to where it kind of breaks down some of these original series that Netflix does, in the co-licensed originals, they have a very interesting paragraph here where it says, to co-license a show, Netflix would commit to giving a given percentage of its total production budget, a figure which would vary based on the number of market rights bought and competition for said rights. Accordingly, Netflix can end up paying a substantial portion of the production budget for only a single market, e.g. 60% for just the US rights, and sometimes more than 100% for all rights outside of the developing network's home market, thereby making the show essentially free for that network. For example, Netflix is believed to cover more than 100% of the cost of CBS All Access's Star Trek Discovery for the exclusive rights to the series in most non-US markets. The co-licensor's ability to influence creative, budgetary, and renewal cancellation decisions usually depends on the share of the total production budget they cover, as well as their leverage, e.g., how many companies, how competitive the bidding was, and whether or not the original or pre-existing IP, whether the originating network is licensing the IP or owns it outright, etc. To this end, Netflix is believed to have virtually no control over Star Trek Discovery's creative or budgetary decisions, though there would be predefined maximums, and may be forced to buy it for as many as 5 seasons, regardless of whether the show performs well on their service or not. So guys, the reason Star Trek Discovery continues to get renewed is because Netflix is on the hook for 5 seasons of the show. And so we're going to get at least 5 seasons of Discovery going forward. It's Netflix, it's CBS All Access's biggest draw. It's its biggest growth property. The more Star Trek they put out, the more they're going to get into this. They don't even need Netflix to finance Picard because they're already in the black. This is the reason why Star Trek Discovery is a powerhouse for CBS All Access. This is why it's not going to get canceled anytime soon. This is why Alex Kurtzman is not in danger of being fired. So this is my case for why Star Trek Discovery is a hit. Now let me know your guys' thought. Mr. Vader, what do you think of this?
I kind of going back to that part of the article where it said everybody talks about it. Everybody's talking about it because it's so damn bad. Every conversation I have,
not wrong. I don't think.
We had this conversation just last night. I talked to an hour with this new guy at work about how shitty this show is and how it's just not Star Trek with the Klingorks and everything. But at least now they're in the future and we can't bash on them about how bad the coming seasons will be because the entire season won't be a retcon of season 1, right? So we'll see how it goes. Bring it. I mean, if nothing else, we'll get 5 seasons of stuff to talk about on YouTube streams, right? So
now, Alex, what do you think of this breakdown? And do you think that we're going to get 5 seasons worth of Star Trek Discovery?
That was very thorough, and I applaud you for that. So good job on your investigative reporting. Yeah, probably. Why not? If it's not going to cost them any money, if they're not losing money doing it, of course they're going to make it. It gives them content to put on their streaming service. And, there's at least, as much as we all kind of agree that it's not the best thing in the world, some of us hate us, some of us are just kind of middle ground. There's a lot of people out there who do watch it. I mean, we went to the Star Trek convention, and there was a substantial amount of people there that were dressed up as the Star Trek Discovery people. They obviously like the show, so that has an audience that might not be as critical as we are, or might not dissect it as much as we do, who just want to be entertained. It's very much J.J. Abrams' flash over substance, or what's the phrase for that? Style over substance. So. Yeah, it's going to be around for a while, and my only hope is that it gets better. I hope that the people running the show lean more towards classic Star Trek, which even if you do enjoy the show, people out there who like this show, you have to admit it doesn't feel like Star Trek. Even people, we all see that. That's a fair evaluation, I think. That's not too super negative. It just doesn't feel the same. So, and I think it was Jonathan Franks, or one of the fans at one of the panels at Star Trek Convention, said that going forward, they're going to be leaning more towards the classic Trek because they realize that that's been lacking in the last couple of years with the TV shows. So, as a lot of the other Star Trek shows, when Next Generation first came out, people didn't like it because it wasn't like the original series. When Deep Space Nine came out, I still don't even like Deep Space Nine.
How dare you, sir?
I think it's so boring. It's
No,
Paul,
you have to skip the first 2 seasons. Basically.
it's Paul Blart. It's Paul Blart in space, man. It just doesn't work for me. But like, I think it takes a while for these new Trek series to get their footing and find their own way. So
let me ask you this, Mr. Nerd, before we get to Tom, because I know Tom's chomping at the bit on this. So a lot of your issues that make you salty is just this outrage culture where people kind of latch on to all the negative, bad stuff, especially regarding Star Trek. So how does this put that in context for you? Do you think that a lot of the hate is deserved, or do you think that, these people just kind of jump on these rumors to advance their agenda as opposed to looking at actual facts?
Oh, totally. 100%. It's people that jump on to whatever news they can for the echo chamber that they're trying to pander to. And they just kind of run with that. Everybody hates Discovery. Everybody hates it. Nobody's watching it, which, I mean, it has a little bit of truth. This whole group right here that we're talking to right now is proof of that there are some legitimate criticisms about the show. But I think it might be, I think it's fair. I don't know. I don't want to dig myself into a hole. It's not a minority. I don't want to say it's a vocal minority because I hate that freaking phrase, but I think it's they're looking at the pure numbers of it. And even the people who don't like it are still watching it just so that they can see if it gets any better at least, or if they want to dissect it. We all watched it. We all didn't like it. So
my numbers are in there with all the other stats too. My thing is, I find these stats and these ratings and everything with these streaming services kind of interesting, because how do they measure people like me who finds the absolute cheapest way possible to watch streaming services? I have several. I don't pay for all of them because I have other people's keys that they give me. It's like my Netflix. There's 5 people on my Netflix account that we all have legal ways to use. Me and my daughter, my other daughter, my grandkids, we all have legit logons, and they're 1,000 miles away up in Oregon. So
yeah, same with me. My whole family shares all of our streaming services. I share HBO and Netflix. We get Amazon and CBS. So I didn't pay to watch Discovery, but I'm on there as apparently my family has watched it 3 separate times. So I really liked it because I watched it a bunch of times.
So I get HBO for free.
Yeah.
With my lease on my apartment.
Yeah.
And I get HBO Go with that.
But they don't. Yeah, but they don't care. That's a subscription. That's that $15 a month.
Well, I'm about to unleash the Kraken and let Tom take a crack at this. I know that he has very passionate things to say about parent analytics and other things.
Yes.
So go for it, Tom.
Well, here's the thing is I loved what you just went through, and it was very thorough, and it was a very sound argument for the most part, but I think you're mixing a couple different things together here. And parent analytics, especially considering what you're trying to argue against, was not a good thing to pull up, because I think parent analytics is complete and utter bullshit. Like, they are nothing but something for the company to show shareholders that, oh, look, what we're doing is successful, when nothing else is proving that. And just to go to show you what I mean is a show I love and adore, and is probably my favorite brand new show on right now, Cobra Kai, had the exact same headline that Star Trek Discovery did, not even a few days apart, coming from Parrot Analytics. So don't tell me that how can 2 exact same things be the exact? It doesn't make no. They're complete and utter. And then there's other companies like, and even Parrot Analytics might be one of the companies that is under investigation right now for this exact practice. Now, the other thing about the Google thing, I do find some merit in that. But again, as Matt pointed out, and this is where I'm actually going to say where Matt's right, CBS, it doesn't matter even if it is a hit with the viewers, it's already paid for. It's money in CBS's pocket. Netflix paid for Discovery, Amazon's paying for Picard. They are not out of pocket at all on this situation. They are definitely swimming in cash when it comes to Star Trek, even if there isn't any merchandise to support it, really, outside of the standard t-shirts and whatnot like that. Basically what we saw at Star Trek convention. Hardly any of this stuff is licensed out, which means extra money, but that's a whole nother argument altogether. Now, as far as it being a hit, I think that's debatable, because there's a lot of people, as we just pointed out, that probably hate watch the show as well, but they're still watching the show. So it doesn't matter. It's still ratings. And in the way that the streaming services work, Matt was pretty spot on about that as far as my understanding of the situation too. You have different kind of tiers and levels to where the extra advertising is money in CBS's pocket as well. So it's all like pure profit to them. This is not a situation where they're out any money or we have never ever said that Star Trek Discovery is going to be canceled at any time or anything like that. Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, things couldn't change behind the scenes, and Discovery isn't a show that they just decide to either change or get rid of eventually, but I'm sure we're stuck with it for 5 seasons like Matt said, which is strange because usually Netflix won't go past 3. That's the funny thing with them. I find that very odd that they sign on for 5 seasons. But,
well, I think Netflix was really gearing for like they were chomping at the bit for a new Star Trek thing, and their international market is kind of what they're catering to nowadays. But the really interesting metrics that we need to look at is like how many subscribers do the Star Trek shows bring in, and how many of those stick around for.
There's other factors though that you're not bringing into this, Matt. There's football. There's other shows. The Twilight Zone was a hit for them.
Yeah. No, like that. That's all legitimate
for them. Or not the Good Wife, the Good Fight, or whatever the spinoff is of the other. I don't even remember anymore. They have a lot of stuff that isn't Star Trek too, that is drawing in viewers. But see, because I've talked to people who have CBS All Access, and even as Star Trek fans, they weren't even aware that there was a new Star Trek series until I brought it up to them. So I mean, there's still that factor. And not only that, they're not talking about the number of people that drop off after Star Trek is over as well.
Yeah, this is true. And I want to say that aside, quality of the offerings aside, when you're just looking at these hard numbers like these studio execs do, they look at like how many new subscribers signed up because of Star Trek. How many of those subscribers did we churn? Did we lose after the season ended? What were the ratings? What could we charge for the advertisements? What's the overall lifetime customer value of our subscribers? Like they're getting all these metrics, and it's not just a simple question of are the ratings high or are the ratings low. They're looking at all these different elements to kind of determine whether or not a show is a hit or not. I think that a lot of people are still of the mindset, it's the show's ratings. If people hate the show, then it's going to get canceled.
It's not the same, no.
Yeah, there's a lot of difference.
You're right about that, and that's what I wanted to say. Is you're definitely, as far as I can tell, your analysis on how that system works is spot on. And another thing I don't know if you really brought it up or brought it to attention, was in that period in there, CBS got a big boost from adding their service to Amazon, which I think is going to be a key factor going forward too in a lot of these services, because I think that was a big player in the reason why they got a deal with Amazon for Picard as well. It's one of those things where I don't think we're going to really know if Star Trek Discovery is an actual hit until many, many years down the road. And I really don't think we're going to ever get any real solid numbers until many years down the road, probably.
Well, I think that CBS considers it a hit as it is right now.
Yeah, because as I said, they're not out anything.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about this Amazon deal. I think the deal is strictly like, they're doing these like, you can subscribe to CBS All Access through Amazon. I don't think.
Yeah, and it makes it more accessible
for it. Yeah, so and they're going to be doing that on Apple TV Plus, and
Yeah, they got a huge boost from that. There's a lot of these little services that are getting huge boosts from putting their services on Amazon, and that's how they're going to survive in the streaming war, basically.
Yeah, but we're going to get to a few comments here, and then we're going to wrap things up. So we got a comment from my good Twitter friend, Michael O'Connor. He said, I just wanted to say you guys are fantastic. Thanks for the interesting conversation. And I have to admit, Matt, I'm impressed by your objectivity in this argument. You're not letting your dislike of the show blind you to the facts. And thank you for that, Mr. Connor. That was very nice of you to say. And of course, Tom himself had said, yeah, I'm sorry, Parrot Analytics is bullshit. But I found it kind of an interesting contrast to the Google Trends type thing.
Well, and that's the thing, though, is Parrot Analytics is Fugazi to me. They say whatever it is you want them to say.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And at least with the Google thing, and I got to give them credit with that was pretty solid. Now, does it prove anything? Not really. but it does show that it's not as popular as some people like to boast, because if it was, it would be more popular than some of the other things that they put it up against. And Doomcock's video is much more for entertainment. I would put it that way. You can't really put any true water behind it and expect it to hold it. But it is interesting to see how popular the Star Trek JJ verse is in comparison to Discovery, which is much more. And I can even say something to that. Our videos that have to do with the JJ verse movies do usually do much better than the Discovery ones. In fact, one of our million view videos is one of the Star Trek 4 videos. So,
all right, Michael O'Connor says, I can agree with your entire analysis of the show. I think we can all agree that a large amount of conversation about the show is critical, but if people are paying, that's all that really matters to CBS All Access.
Yeah, that's why I said hate watch it or not, they're still seeing it as a viewer.
Mr. Vader, do you have any final thoughts on Star Trek Discovery you'd like to share with the world?
Final thoughts on this? It's just a bad show. I don't know what to say. Yeah, hate watcher. That's me. I'm a hate watcher of Star Trek Discovery, and I hope season 3 is better. I love Star Trek, man. I want good stories. I want good characters. I want it to be good.
Yes, Mr. Nerd, what are your final thoughts on Star Trek Discovery?
My final thoughts on Star Trek Discovery. The best thing to come out of that show is Anson Mount as Captain Pike, and I am 100% supportive of having him with his own show on the Enterprise.
Right.
They got 10 years. They got 10 years to work with. Just don't mess with any canon stuff. Go for it.
And Mr. Connors, your final thoughts on Star Trek Discovery?
I can at least agree with that. I'm hopeful for Picard. I liked Pike, I still say that this third season is where they should have started to begin with, completely far enough away from any canon that they couldn't have interrupted, and now it's not going to matter anymore. So, as far as the popularity of the show, I'll be surprised if we find out in the future it was any more popular than Enterprise was. And I do got to correct Salty Nerd a little bit. Yeah, there was some pushback on TNG, but it's not nearly as bad as everybody likes to say it was. I think it was more so at first there was a lot of people upset they weren't bringing back the original cast. But as soon as the show began, I think a lot of people were on board. And I hate it when people say, like, oh, the first 2 seasons sucked. It's like, no, they didn't. Some of the best Star Trek TNG episodes are in those seasons. It's just the show got better from the 3rd season on. And why wouldn't you want a show to get better? Yeah.
There's actually a great documentary on Netflix called Chaos on the Bridge that talks about.
Yeah, I need to watch that.
The next generation. If you're a Star Trek fan, definitely check that out. Anyway, guys, thank you for assembling for the Legion of Doom on this fine day and talking about all sorts of nerdy stuff that nobody actually really cares about but me. I really appreciate it. So just real quick before we head off, why don't you tell everyone where they can find out more about you, Mr. Vader? We'll start with you.
Twitter and Instagram, Matt Vader 74, and Mixer at Matt Vader, playing some games over there. All good.
Great. Mr. Nerd, where can they find out more about you?
You guys can go on Instagram at the Salty Nerd Podcast. I appreciate some follows there. I got about 200. I'm trying to build that following more. I do a lot of news posts on movies and updates on TV shows and stuff. And then, of course, on Twitter at Salty Nerd. I am overly active. I should probably cut back a little bit.
All right. And Mr. Connors, where can they find out more about you?
Oh, Midnight's Edge and Midnight's Edge After Dark. In fact, I'm working on another Spider-Man editorial for Andre right now, so keep an eye out for that, probably later on this afternoon.
Yes, and if you'd like to find out more about me, I got my socials down here. Instagram and Twitter at Matthew Kadish. I'm pretty active on Twitter, so if you want to have a chat with me, hop on there. My Facebook group is eggfbgroup.com. That'll take you right to the Facebook group where we talk about movies, TV shows, all the fun stuff that we do on the live streams. You can also check out my Amazon profile at kadishbooks.com. That's KADISH books.com. And subscribe to my YouTube channel at kadishvideo.com. That'll take you right to my channel. You can hit that subscribe button and smash that bell icon to be notified every time we not only do a live stream, but also every time I upload a video, which I try to do regularly. Anyway, thank you to all the evil geniuses who joined me, not only on the stream, but also in the chats. I know we had a lot of great commenters. Sorry we couldn't get to all your comments, but I really appreciate you guys watching and interacting. And to my esteemed evil genius guests, thank you for joining me. This is Matthew Kadish, and I will catch you guys in the next video. See you later.